Right, good evening. I was hoping that I could reduce the preamble that I'm going to have to go through, which is why you have on your desks a sheet of paper, which is basically an exact copy of what I have to say. But unfortunately, most of the things I have to say are applicable beyond the councillors, and so therefore I have to say it. So I'm going to first explain the process that we'll be following this evening. In order to keep members and officers safe, there will be limited numbers seated in the council chamber. Therefore, some members will be seated in another meeting room at Chute End. These members will be seen on screen and can hear everything that is being said in the council chamber. They will also be able to take part in any discussions. When any vote is undertaken, those members will come into the council chamber one at a time to state how they wish to vote on a particular item. All other members have been invited to join the meeting via Teams. These members can take part in any discussions, but are not entitled to propose, second, or vote on any of the items. If you are participating via Teams, when you are not speaking or being asked to speak, please mute your microphones. If you do not mute your microphone, it will be muted for you. To assist people viewing the meeting, could everyone participating via Teams turn off their cameras and only turn them on when speaking, and also introduce themselves whenever they speak? To ensure the smooth running of the meeting, could members wishing to speak via Teams please use the hands up facility whenever possible? And please do not speak until asked to do so by myself. Could those members in the chamber please raise their hands whenever they wish to speak? Please note that the meeting is currently being webcast live. Please note that to avoid the chat function on Microsoft Teams being used inappropriately, it has been disabled for this meeting. And finally, may I remind everyone that I intend to adhere strictly to the timings set out in the Constitution. Thank you. So, do we have any apologies?
Two apologies, Mr. Mayor. That's Councillor Stephen Conway and Councillor Rebecca Nuggets.
Thank you. Are there any other apologies from the floor? Can't see any, so we'll move straight on. The minutes. I believe, unless anybody has anything to say, that there is agreement with the minutes. So I intend to ask only those members in the chambers to vote on this item. If anyone in David Hicks is unhappy with this proposal, could they please raise their hands, and we will then ask members in David Hicks' room to come into the chamber and take part in the recorded vote. So, Lucian, is everybody okay in the Hicks room?
Yes, I don't see any hands up.
Thank you. So we don't need a recorded vote. And so all those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. I will sign the minutes. I have them here at the end of this meeting. Moving on to item 64, declarations of interest. Can I point out that individuals, particularly the council company directors, you only need to declare a declaration of interest if there is an agenda item that is relevant to you. So can I have hands up to who wants to make a declaration of interest? I'll start with Councillor Bray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have two items on the agenda, the white ribbon item and the anti-abuse charter. And I'm a trustee of Kaleidoscopic UK, some of whose members I think are watching us live tonight. And I need to declare that interest because it's a charity that deals with domestic abuse.
Thank you. Councillor Eunice.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to declare my interest as a non-executive director of Loudon Homes.
Councillor Kaiser. Of the companies. And Councillor Halsall.
I'm a director of Optimus Holdings Limited. So.
And Councillor Smith.
Director of the Holdco holding companies.
Councillor Munro.
Likewise. Mr. Mayor.
Director of Optimus.
And Councillor Jorgensen.
Non-executive director of Loudon Homes Limited.
Thank you very much. Can't see any others. So, right, moving on to item number 65, Mayor's announcements. I've only got a couple, because I know we've got a full agenda and I want to get through it tonight. First of all, can I thank all those councillors who signed the clasp no to hate crime? We got 53 out of 54, which I think is an amazing achievement. I will be handing the signed charters over to the manager of CLASP in the next week with a photo opportunity, etc. So can I thank each and every one of you for making this important declaration against hate crime. Then the other one is to do with the Mayor's dinner dance, the ball that's coming up in March. Thank you to those of you who have actually booked tickets, and a special thank you to those who can't make it and have made a good donation. But the numbers are still, in terms of councillors, are still pretty low. So can I encourage you, please, to think long and hard and book tickets. We're up to about 120 at the moment. 150 is our limit, and I'd love those 30 to be filled up with councillors to do their bit. It's a perfect, a superb charity. You're going to be well entertained with a wheelchair dance, Daniel Johnson. There's going to be a disco and a photo booth if you want silly photos. So that's the end of my announcements. So I'm going to now move into item 66, which is a public question time. We have 30 minutes for here. Can I remind that any question should be, any response to a question should be no longer than 2 minutes, and supplementaries must be related to the question or the answer, not a speech, and the response to that no longer than 1 minute. So the first one is Mr. Meadowcroft. I can see him down in the front. Would you like to ask your question, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Councillor Munro. At the November 2021 full council meeting, the Mayor, responding to a member's query about a previous meeting draft minutes, was advised by Democratic Services that the minuting of a written answer to a supplementary question, which was, in that case was about the member's use of private email addresses raised at the September meeting, was not required because clause 4299 written answers in the Constitution did not extend to written answers to supplementary questions. The first two words of 4299, which specifically deals with written answers, are any questions. And I consider that the advice given to the Mayor, which he duly endorsed and thereby dismissed the member's query, was patently flawed. To prevent this occurring again, in the interest of transparency and openness, otherwise written answers to supplementary questions will be hidden from both public and member view, will this full council meeting tonight urge the Constitution Review Working Group to revise the wording of 4299 to ensure that Democratic Services in future advises the Mayor and the Leader of the Council, both of whom I trust on reflection will agree with me, that written answers to supplementary questions will be included in the minutes of the related meeting.
Councillor Munro.
Thank you, Mr. Meadowcroft, and good evening, and thank you for your question.
Residents' participation in the work of the council is at the heart of our approach, and we strive to encourage transparency and openness. Section 3 of the Constitution sets out the various ways in which residents can participate. Asking questions at a full meeting of council is just one of the many ways in which residents can get involved. Dealing with your specific concern about the minutes of the answers to supplementary questions, I do not agree with your assertion that the advice provided to the Mayor was flawed. Clause 4299 applies specifically to substantive written questions that cannot be dealt with during public question time, either because of lack of time, because of the non-attendance of the questioner, or because the non-attendance of the member to whom it was to be put, or because the member answering the question requires further information not available at the time, will be deemed to have been put and shall be the subject of a written reply within 7 working days to the person asking the question. The answer shall also be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. However, this provision does not apply to the supplementary questions, which can take longer to respond to due to the often complex nature of the subject matter. Officers have researched your request further and confirmed that Wokingham's practice is consistent with other Berkshire authorities. However, I am prepared to bring this query to the Constitution Review Working Group so members can give this further consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Monroe. Do you have a supplementary, Mr. Meadowcroft?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Monroe. There are elements of your reply that I appreciate what was said at the end, but most of it I found remarkably complacent. A complacent answer to a question which I think is quite straightforward, and therefore I'm not really surprised that the executive wants to spend 150,000 to market research to find out why Wokingham residents are not in raptures with the achievements of the council. My supplementary question is therefore quite simple, and therefore I have a reasonable expectation you will answer it this evening, please. Is what you have said tonight as chairman of the Constitution Review Working Group really totally and completely consistent with the highest standards of conduct in public life, which Wokingham aspires to and mentions in at least 10 places in the Constitution and in the standards set out in chapter 9.2, conduct, appendix A, principles, and appendix C, practice. Whether or not...
Thank you, Mr. Meadowcroft. You've exceeded your 1 minute, so Councillor Monroe.
Yes or no, Councillor Monroe?
No, I totally agree with you. And that's why I said we'll take a look at it at the next Constitution Review Working Group. But before I did the really research, it made sense to me. So I think it's worth looking at again. That's the answer. The answer is yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Erawala on virtual, if you'd like to ask your question, please.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's for the leader of the council. Please, can I have an update on the council's anti-poverty strategy? Thank you.
Good evening, Danny, and thank you for the question. Development of the anti-poverty strategy is progressing well, with an analysis of data having been undertaken prior to Christmas with an initial consultation of those who are struggling. Engagement of the wide voluntary and community sector is paramount to design and delivery of the strategy, and they have been engaged since September to develop a draft strategy. In late December, we established a hardship alliance with 4 key WCS organisations, voluntary sector organisations, to lead this work and focus on coordinating VCS engagement to informing the strategy and underpinning the action plan. There is a cross-party working group which has been contributing to and engaged in the development of the strategy throughout. This has enabled ongoing member discussions and input to inform the proposals coming forward from within the council and from our partners. Early engagement with the town and parish clerks demonstrates a desire to also be involved and consider how they are able to support projects in their local areas. The strategy is now at a stage of going into public consultation for 1 month, which will target members of the public, VCS organisations and town and parish councils. Responses to this consultation will feed into the draft strategy and action planning, help to identify any gaps in proposals and widen engagement to other groups who would like to be involved. Action plans are being developed in the council and with our VCS partners which will be built up over the next couple of months as engagement widens. The anti-poverty strategy will be delivered through an annual action plan, refreshed each year, working towards objectives of the strategy and able to build on previous year's actions. Development of the strategy is currently on track for the anti-poverty strategy to be launched the following local elections in May 2022. Engagement with the VCS in developing the strategy has included a series of meetings since September led by citizen advice to gain initial input, workshop on terminology to make language accessible and not stigmatizing, specific meetings with other forums and groups to gain early buy-in and input to form the draft strategy, creation of a hardship alliance in December to be key partners in engaging and leading the widest VCS, ongoing work with the VCS through the hardship alliance to develop and deliver projects to tackle poverty. We hope to make a considerable difference through this strategy. Thank you, Danny.
Thank you.
Mr. Arawala, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Local charities do a lot to help people struggling financially. Please, can you let me know how they have been involved in the creation of the anti-poverty strategy? Thank you.
Danny, as I said, they are key to developing the strategy and a very substantial part of the working group taking it forward.
Many thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Halsall. Mrs. Sherratt, Julie Sherratt, I think I can see you're probably there. Can you ask your question, please?
Hello, yes. Hello. In the introduction of the Domestic Abuse Strategy 2021 to 24 document, it's claimed that the prevention is at the heart of the strategy. However, there's only one sentence referring to prevention in the rest of the document. Please can Councillor Soane outline the strategy aims and how it aims to prevent domestic abuse and put prevention at the heart of the strategy to reassure residents that this is not a hollow document.
Councillor Soane.
Thank you very much. Let me take that off. Good evening, Juliet. Thank you very much for your question. Prevention is at the heart of the Domestic Abuse Strategy 2021-24 and can be found within the body of the strategy document. The key priorities and detailed explanations, which can be found on pages 16, 17, 34, 35 and 36, explain the work that is being undertaken in relation to prevention, including support educational settings to raise awareness of domestic abuse, deliver training to enable domestic abuse to be identified and responded to, encourage those who are causing harm as a result of their abusive and controlling behaviour to change, tackle the root cause of domestic abuse, including seeking to break the cycle of abuse. To ensure that we have a robust mechanism to drive change and deliver on our priorities, the strategy is underpinned by an action plan. This action plan is continually updated and reviewed at a 2 bi-monthly domestic abuse meetings to review progress and address any blockers to achieving the aims. The action is linked to supporting educational settings, is to provide reassurance that the actions are targeted and have set outcomes and measures. The action plan, like the strategy, cover a 3-year period, commencing December 2021. So whilst all actions have been initiated and key agencies and measurements agreed, some of the actions are currently in the early stages of delivery. Some will remain on the plan for the 3-year period as they will be ongoing. Other actions will be added to reflect the new and emerging issues during this time period. Thank you.
Mrs. Sherratt, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you for your answer. Yes, I do have a supplementary. When I've looked at page 16, 17, 34, 35 and 36, I could only see a sort of framework that was heavily, with heavy emphasis on action to be taken after the event of domestic abuse. My question was specifically about prevention. And given that the Conservative councillors wouldn't sign up to the White Ribbon campaign, which focuses largely on misogyny and preventing domestic violence, what will the council sign up for as part of their campaign for prevention? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. As far as prevention is concerned, as I said in the beginning, it is at the heart of our domestic abuse strategy, and prevention is the key part of it. And therefore, actions that we are taking will be before the events rather than after. That's our aim, and that's where we will be considerably making an effort.
Thank you, Councillor Stone. Thank you, Ms. Sherratt. Can we now move on to Annette Medhurst, who should be here virtually? Is she there? Doesn't look like. On that basis, there'll be a written response with or without in the minutes, depending on CRWG. So I'm going to move on to Louise Timlin. Is she there on virtual? Would you like to put your question forward, please?
Yes, thank you. White Ribbon is a leading national charity engaging with men and boys aiming to end men's violence against women. They're working towards the culture change that is needed to prevent violence before it starts. Part of this is encouraging men and boys to recognise and call out harassment, sexist behaviour, microaggressions and misogynistic jokes in order to promote equality and respect and remove the cultural norms which enable the tolerance and excuse of men's violence against women. The 4 recommendations from the Equalities Working Group do not address these aims. Please could the leader of the Equalities Working Group state how Woking and Borough Council intends to be a role model and what concrete actions it will take to seek the culture change necessary to prevent men's violence against women?
Councillor Blumenthal.
Thank you for your question. All councillors will soon be receiving an invitation to a workshop led by Dr. Fiona Vera-Gray from Durham University on public harassment and violence against women. Dr. Vera-Gray is industry leading and gave key guidance to the government's violence against women and girls strategy. She'll share with us policy recommendations and practical suggestions, including for culture change, to help us make Woking Borough safer for women. You'll notice in the report that's come from the Cross-Party Equality Working Group that the council's already talking to White Ribbon. The leader of the council, officers and I met with them, and they're a fantastic organisation that we support. We decided with them that the best way forward was for them to help us training our frontline staff. We're not at the beginning of our culture change journey, but advanced, so don't need to rewind back to create another action plan and set up a new committee, which White Ribbon accreditation would require, and pay a fee to duplicate work that's already been done. You'll also see in the report that we're seeking accreditation, just one that's more comprehensive and ideally grade performance, as that matches our culture change programme. We're looking for White Ribbon to contribute to our established monthly domestic abuse training frontline staff. This focuses on culture change and gives attendees the insights into violence against specific demographics. This doesn't just cover male violence against women, but also how abuse can manifest, for example, against older people, men, and those with disabilities. We're also designing training for staff and councillors on allyship and being an active bystander, which will help tackle street harassment and microaggressions. This will not just cover sexism, but goes further and will address the 9 protected characteristics, including covering racism, homophobia, and prejudice against disabled people. Further afield, the councils also work with the police to train supermarket workers to support victims that go into stores. And all major pharmacies in the borough have signed up to Ask for Annie, the scheme which alerts staff to taking someone to a safe space. We're working to roll this out, Ask for Annie, to council buildings after all the staff are fully trained, so residents can access more safe havens. Working with partners such as the police and businesses in rolling out culture change is helping to create informed citizens who are equipped.
Can I stop you, Councillor Blumenthal? You've run out of time. So, Ms. Timlin or Mrs. Timlin, do you have a supplementary?
It's Muzz. Do the members of this council agree to take the White Ribbon pledge, never to commit, excuse or remain silent about male violence against women? And if not, why not?
I think that's a question for everyone rather than me, but obviously I'll be the one answering it. I think that's up to every individual. I can't answer on other people's behalf. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blumenthal. We now just one more question. JB Staunton is, are you on the virtual? Yes, please ask your question.
Good evening, everybody. The Ofsted Rapid Review of Sexual Abuse in Schools and Colleges, published in June 21, found that 90% of girls and 50% of boys have been sent explicit pictures or videos of things they did not want to see. 92% of girls and 74% of boys said sexist name calling happens a lot. Children reported that sexual harassment is so commonplace that they see no point in reporting it. One of your 4 recommendations is to write to schools to ask how they are upholding the Department for Education's Keeping Children Safe in Education policy. This seems a rather passive recommendation to me. Addressing a sexist culture is essential in order to end men's violence against women, and clearly schools have a huge role to play in this. Will you be making it clear to schools what best practice looks like, and how will you be holding them accountable to implement these best practices?
Councillor Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Staunton, for your question. There's many facets to this answer. The Berkshire West Children's Safeguarding Partnership provides support and guidance to partners across the locality. Ofsted review their activity to support schools and partners to further developing practice. It includes supporting discussion with school self-evaluation to promote the best practice, including the Education Act, Section 175 requirements. That is to support the annual school safeguarding audit process using the NSPCC tool to ensure that schools comply with 175 of the Education Act. The tool has also been updated this year to include a section on peer-to-peer abuse, and the results of this section will be analysed to identify any compliance gaps. The BWSCP, widely shared with school head teachers and designated safeguarding leads, a document titled Local Advice on Harmful Sexual Behaviour, Sexual Harassment and Sexual Violence, that outlines the expectations on school from September 21 in relation to the statutory guidance, which is titled Keeping Children Safe in Education. That was published in September 21. Discussion at the Wokingham Educational Safeguarding Engagement Group in response to the Department of Education letter to safeguarding partners regarding sexual abuse in schools and colleges. The Education Safeguarding Engagement Group discussed this topic on a number of occasions, and as a result, head teachers have shared the resources for training packages and safeguarding that they use.
I'm sorry, Councillor Howe, you've run out of time.
As always.
JB Saunders, I'm sure you've got a supplementary.
So I suppose the first bit, will you be making it clear to school what best practice looks like, and will you be holding them accountable?
Councillor Howe.
Sorry, I didn't catch that. Could you repeat it, please?
Yes, sorry. Will you be making it clear what best practice looks like? I wasn't sure if that was a yes or a no. And will you be holding them accountable?
Thank you for repeating that, and I'll clean my ears better tomorrow. The answer is yes, basically. There is a letter that's been out under my signature to all school heads just a couple of weeks ago, actually, asking them to make sure that their policies were up to date and that are agreed by their governing boards. You'll understand that academies don't report to the authority. We can only influence. We cannot command and control. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howe, and thank you, JB Staunton, for your question. That is the final question on the agenda item 66. We're now moving on to agenda item 67, petitions. I believe we've got one coming in from Councillor Burgess. Are there any other petitions other than that one? I'm looking around. Okay, Councillor Burgess, you have 3 minutes to speak, and thank you for sending a copy of the petition in advance, Joanne. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Parents in my ward of Norreys contacted me last year to raise serious concerns for the safety of children walking from Norreys to the Holt School across Milton Road. Many Norreys residents use the new Greenway through Cantley Park, but this comes out abruptly on a very busy road at a three-way mini roundabout, and there's currently no safe crossing point for students to get to and from their school. At the beginning and the end of the school day, the area is very chaotic, with cars going in different directions on and off the mini roundabout, and parents pulling up to drop off or pick up their children. I've witnessed students trying to cross at this time of day, and it's clear many of them are just unsure whether it's actually safe to cross. Residents have called it an accident waiting to happen, and while this area is technically in Embrook, the vast majority of students and families that this issue affects come from my ward of Norreys. The strength of feeling on this issue, calling for a safe crossing, was evidenced by this petition, which attracted hundreds of signatures as soon as it was launched. We now have over 650 signatures. The council are planning a crossing on Milton Road as part of the Greenway extension from Cantley. However, this does nothing to help the Holt students, as for them it's in the wrong place. The proposed crossing serves the Greenway only. Students crossing Milton Road at the proposed crossing site, which is north of that mini roundabout, would still have then to cross the very busy Jubilee Avenue and possibly Holt Lane as well in order to get to their school. And these roads are just as chaotic and dangerous at busy times of day. We all know how important it is for children to walk to school for health reasons and to reduce emissions from vehicles. But in these conditions, I can understand why parents choose to drive, as they're rightly concerned for their children's safety. This petition, with over 650 signatures, calls for a safe crossing point that serves students from the Holt to allow them to walk safely to and from school. There's great strength of feeling on this, and the council must now listen to parents' concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burgess. And that will obviously be passed on to Councillor Jorgensen in the normal fashion. So we're now moving on to item 68, which is the beginning of the specific business that we need to get through. I need to say up front that Democratic Services have consulted with the leaders of all the groups to see whether they were amenable to, for any agenda item, to restrict the vote to just in this chamber. I'm pleased to say that I think it's three of the agenda items will fall into that category where all leaders have agreed. What that will mean is it won't be a recorded vote. It will also mean that we'll be hopefully quicker in getting through that agenda item. So the first agenda item is agenda 68, which is one of those that will be decided in the chamber only. Excuse me. So do we have a proposer for the council's anti-abuse? Councillor Blumenthal. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Kerr. So you have up to 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you. I'd like to alter the recommendation to include that a progress report is to go at least twice a year to the relevant Open Scrutiny Committee. This has already been handed out in the chamber. It's on the orange paper. It would go to Open Scrutiny normally, but it's just to be clear to residents.
So the process now then is I need a show of hands whether the change to the recommendation as you've received on this sheet is acceptable. All those in favour, please show. I think that's unanimous. All those against? All those abstaining? So that recommendation has been accepted for change. So if you'd like to carry on with your speech.
Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to thank Vicky Robertson from Kaleidoscopic, the local domestic abuse charity, for working with me on the council's anti-abuse charter that's presented here tonight. Its purpose is to be a declaration of this council's commitment to protect and support victims of violence and a dedication to do more. It acts as an umbrella under which all the actions to deliver just that falls: the domestic abuse strategy, the culture change monthly training sessions, the network of 40 multi-agency representatives, the new trauma training, the equalities training programme being designed to address harassment, the sanctuary scheme, the domestic abuse housing accreditation we're going for, recruiting the new domestic abuse housing officer. Something I wanted to mention in my answer to Ms. Timlin was we're later going to be doing training with teachers around violence and harassment. We know that schools are places where culture is created and stopped, so that offers a great opportunity for us. And the list goes on, but there's always more to do, and we want to go further. Usually charters act as declarations, noting an intention of action, but this one comes after and during a huge amount of activity, some of which I've already listed. It'll act as a long-term reminder for officers and councillors of our commitment and is broad on purpose, and continued scrutiny of progress will drive standards higher. It's comprehensive of all people in the borough, and it doesn't focus specifically on domestic violence, although the paper shows it's strongly aligned with our domestic abuse strategy. We know that violence is broader and covers harassment too. We know that men in our borough are affected by violence as well, and specific demographics experience particular aggression and harassment, such as if they're disabled, Black or LGBT. Some may think it's a nice few words, but what does it do exactly? It feeds well into a key recommendation by the Cross-Party Equalities Working Group, more of which we'll discuss later, that we need to do more to communicate to residents, that we treat violence and harassment against them seriously, and that we're taking action. The Charter goes some way to do just that and gives us an opportunity to highlight publicly the training, provision and culture change we're investing in to support them. I'd like to thank Council Officers Narinda Brar and Karen Evans for all their hard work on culture change and supporting some of our most vulnerable residents. One of the key aspects I'm most proud of the Council for doing is reaching out to expert organisations to feed into the Council's plans, culture change and knowledge. Creating strong partnerships is important, and that's why I'm so happy that Kaleidoscopic, the experts in this area, have worked with me on the Charter. I reached out to leaders of the other parties to ask them to support the Charter, and I'm pleased that it was a unanimous yes. We're all on the same side when it comes to this important issue, and I'm glad that we stand united to support the Charter.
Thank you. Does the seconder want to speak now or reserve your right?
I'll speak now if that's okay,
thank you.
please. Thank you. I actually want to begin by reading an affirmation written by the writer Alex L. You deserve to be in spaces and relationships that make you happy, that feed your soul and help you grow. You are worthy of connections that are loving, nourishing and genuine. Before you settle for anything less than, remind yourself that the places you visit and people you journey with through life should make you feel safe, loved and enough. I would like to thank my friend and Kaleidoscopic founder Vicky Robertson for the work she puts into supporting survivors of domestic abuse and the work she does to improve the system. She works tirelessly, putting others before herself, sacrificing so much to champion and be the voice of survivors of domestic abuse. We are so fortunate to have Vicky working with us to guide this council and its partner organisations. And I hope I can say this on behalf of the whole council. Thank you, Vicky, for bringing this anti-abuse charter to us. If I may, Mr. Mayor, I would like to nominate Vicky Robertson for one of your Roll of Honour awards, please. I'd also like to thank Councillor Blumenthal for amending the wording of the recommendation. It's crucial that this charter is more than just words, and by bringing progress to scrutiny, I hope this provides assurances to the public that the council is being held accountable. I'm really pleased to see that there will be a trauma-informed approach implemented across the council. Not utilising a trauma-informed approach, as is currently the case, means that victims and survivors are penalised for behaviours that result from trauma and their own efforts to feel physically, emotionally and relationally safe. A non-trauma informed approach leads to pathological labelling people with conditions when in fact they are responding to trauma. And this has a stigmatising effect on how other services react and work with them and can have dire consequences, for example, when going through the family courts. Using a trauma-informed approach prioritises safety, trust, collaboration, choice and empowerment, and to avoid re-traumatising. There was no detail in the report about the implementation of a trauma-informed approach, and I look forward to seeing the progress of this in the updates at scrutiny. Finally, in addition to my heartfelt thanks to Vicky, can I thank the officers, Karen, Narinda and the team for all the work you're doing on this, and to the number of organisations and individuals that are shaping a collective response and action to this. I know that many of those who are a part of this are survivors themselves. The bravery you demonstrate in highlighting the traumas that you have been subject to fight for change is inspiring. And to my colleagues in the chamber, I'm so pleased this is going to be voted on unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. So can I have hands up those who wish to speak? Can you keep your hands up? 2 people. Okay. Can I now go to the David Hicks room? Lucian, can you tell me if there's anybody in there who wish to speak, please?
No, nobody from here.
Thank you. And finally, those on councillors on Teams, can you indicate if you wish to speak, please? Can't see anything. Okay, those can be quite quick. So, I'm going to ask for Councillor Burgess first, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support this charter as I recognise the importance of proper training, access to support and a trauma-based approach. It is disappointing, though, that as part of this anti-abuse stance, Conservatives did not wholeheartedly support White Ribbon at the last meeting, as has already been referenced. And on domestic abuse specifically, nationally over the last 10 years, the Conservatives' record on tackling this is poor. And austerity has meant a continued failure to prevent and properly support victims of domestic abuse. In reality, this has meant more victims, including children, being turned away or housed in unsafe accommodation due to a lack of refuge beds. That being said, I recognise the importance of this charter here locally in Wokingham. I value the excellent work being done locally by Kaleidoscopic, and I really appreciate their contribution to this charter this evening. I welcome this motion and the Labour Group will be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burgess. Councillor Son.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. In April 2021, the Government Domestic Abuse Act was passed into law. Following this council agreed our own domestic abuse strategy in December 2021. This strategy lays down the approach Wokingham Borough Council are taking in tackling domestic abuse. Today, we are here to approve the adoption of the local anti-abuse charter. This charter gold plates the strategy by including any form of abuse, ensuring that council's commitment to help residents, victims and survivors understand our aims and to assist them to access our services. Abuse destroys lives, families, communities, takes away self-worth, and in extreme cases, costs lives. In the past year, it's estimated that 2,700 women and 1,500 men were subjected to some form of domestic abuse within Wokingham, a frightening figure. Perhaps an equally disturbing fact is that according to the Office of National Statistics, more than half, 51% of adults who were abused as children experienced domestic abuse in later life. And this is a cycle that must be reduced. This is our prevention. This is something we must aim to prevent. Along with our 43 stakeholders and our total commitment to this anti-abuse charter, we can reduce the number of incidents. I fully support this charter and am sure that will result in the reduction of abuse cases, and the support that we're able to offer our residents will be of comfort to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stone. Councillor Blumenthal, you have the right to reply.
Thank you. I'm very happy that councillors are united in their commitment to the spirit of what this charter stands for and agree that we must always go further. It sends a very strong signal to residents how united we are in our commitment to tackle violence in our borough. So I thank Kaleidoscopic and officers for their work on the charter and for supporting residents, and thank councillors for supporting the charter today.
Thank you. So just before I go to the vote in the chamber, I just need to check with David Hicks' room. Luciana, is everybody happy that it's just going to be the chamber vote? Okay,
Yes.
I can see.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. So can I ask all those in favour, please show? Yep. All those against? No, and all those abstaining. So that charter is now in place. And can I say that I believe that this is the first council in Berkshire, possibly wider, to have such a charter. And I think it's brilliant that all councillors, regardless of party, have put their hands forward and moved this. I think it reflects on how forward thinking we are as a council. Can I say thank you to all of you? So we're now moving on to more mundane things. Agenda item 69, which is the council tax base. We have a proposer?
Yes, I'm proposing it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, and you have a seconder?
Yes.
Okay. Councillor Kaiser, please speak.
Thank you. This basically is a bit of housekeeping, really. It allows us to charge the council tax and for parishes to charge their precepts. It's not mundane because without it we couldn't provide the other services. Excuse me. But it's very important. I mean, I don't think any of it's controversial. And if anybody would like to ask any questions, I will endeavour to answer them. Thank you.
Councillor Horsell, do you want to speak now or reserve your right?
I reserve the right, sir.
Thank you. All those who wish to speak on this, please put your hands up. Nobody? Anybody in, Lucian, anybody in the David Hicks room wishes to speak?
No, no one.
And finally, anybody on Teams wishing to speak? Right. Councillor Horsell, would you like to do your second speech, please?
I think not, sir.
Okay, and Councillor Kaiser, you have a right of reply.
Yes, I would just say, as I said, it's housekeeping and it allows both the the council and the parishes to charge the precept and the council tax. Thank you.
Thank you. So we now go to the vote, which will be a recorded vote and include the people in David Hicks. So we're just getting the sheet ready.
It's for, against or abstention. Councillor Akhtar.
We're just waiting for the David Hicks queue to come in. For.
Councillor Baker.
Abstain.
Councillor Bath.
Can I, excuse me, can we just stop? Can we ask the people who are queuing up not to speak? We're hearing them chatting, please. Thank you. Mine's abstain.
Councillor Blumenthal. For. Councillor Bowring.
For.
Councillor Boyd.
For.
Councillor Bray. Councillor Burgess.
For.
Councillor Chadwick. Councillor Cheng. Councillor Dennis. Councillor Ferris.
For.
Councillor Firminger.
For.
Councillor Fishwick.
For.
Councillor Fruin.
For.
Councillor G. For. Councillor Grandison.
For.
Councillor Halsall.
For.
Councillor Hare. Okay.
He's stepped out, so.
Okay.
Oh.
Councillor Howe.
For.
Councillor Jones.
For.
Councillor Norman Jorgensen.
For.
Pauline Jorgensen. For. Councillor Kaiser.
For.
Councillor Kerr.
For.
Councillor Abdul Lloyd.
Abstain.
Councillor Maher.
For.
Councillor Begets.
For.
Councillor Mather.
For.
Councillor Micklebirth.
For.
Councillor Monroe.
For.
Councillor Murray.
For.
Councillor Patman.
For.
Councillor Rance. For. Councillor Ross.
For.
Councillor Sargent.
For.
Councillor Shenton.
For.
Councillor Imogen Shepherd Bay.
For.
Councillor Rochelle Shepherd Bay.
For.
Councillor Caroline Smith.
For.
Councillor Chris Smith. Councillor Wayne Smith.
For.
Councillor Bill Soane.
For.
Councillor Alison Swaddle.
For.
Councillor Eunice.
For.
David. No. Recommendation carried, agreed.
Okay, thank you very much. So that's agreed. So we move on to item number 70, which is the council tax reduction scheme. Do we have a proposer?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm proposing this.
And you have a seconder?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Councillor Kaiser, would you like to speak, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, the council tax reduction scheme is a scheme that we run as a council which allows a discount to the most vulnerable, a discount on the council tax to the most vulnerable in the borough. That discount can be as much as 100%. It's a very important scheme. It's not a cheap scheme, but because we run the finances well, we are in a position that we can keep the scheme the same as it was last year, which is in fact, we increased it, as you may remember, extended it to
disallow certain allowances, carers allowance, which wasn't allowed, which were counted in the numbers before, which meant a lot of those people now get that discount. And we also extended it to cared for children up to the age of 25. So I recommend this to the council. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Halsall, do you want to speak now or reserve?
I reserve right.
Right, thank you. So can I have hands up in the chamber for those who wish to speak, please? Lucian, can you tell me if there's anybody in David Hicks who wishes to speak?
No, no one.
Okay, and then finally, anybody who's on, oh, I can see one person. Rachel Bishop. Okay. Right, so we'll start off with Councillor Burgess, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last year, you may remember a consultation was undertaken on the council tax reduction scheme. The responses to this consultation showed no desire for the scheme to be cut back, but arguably quite the opposite. If the executive really care about this scheme, it's curious then that only one of the 7 changes to the scheme that were considered in last year's consultation proposed an increase in the level of support. One option last year was to do nothing. All the other options considered in the consultation were cuts. And here we have the same scheme being set up before us once again. We've heard repeatedly in the past that the scheme is demand-led. Once the rules are set, it's true that the executive will commit to providing the support to anyone who is eligible. But what about those who are not eligible but need the support? How is their demand met? The Conservatives have changed the rules of this scheme many times since 2013, so that many fewer people will benefit. As an example, this paper notes the savings level recipients are allowed to have is 4K. Just 3 years ago, that was 16K. By anyone's measure, a massive change, which ensures the scheme would help even fewer people. The fact remains that the funding for this scheme has been reduced steadily since 2013 because of ongoing austerity. Between 2014 and 2021, almost £700,000 less has been spent on this scheme. 1,200 fewer people are helped by the scheme now than back then. There are a number of levers that could be pulled if the will was really there to increase the number of people eligible for this scheme and the amount that they are helped. The backdating of claims, changing the level of reduction applied due to other adults in the household, raising the maximum amount of award. None of these have been considered. We in the Labour group couldn't support this last year and nothing has changed, so we cannot support it this year. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Bishop. Yes, Bishop first, please, virtual.
Thank you very much. The year ahead is going to be a very tough one indeed for our residents living on the lowest incomes. Many of these residents will have lost any financial resilience which they may have had during a pandemic which saw universal credit claimants spike and millions of people furloughed on 80% of already low incomes. In recent months, we've seen universal credit cut by £20 a week. Food and fuel prices are rising sharply, with many predicting that 50% rises in heating bills from April could spark a national emergency. For residents living on a low income, council tax is a major expense. As people increasingly struggle to pay for heating and food, we are unfortunately going to see a lot of our residents simply unable to pay their council tax. This in turn is going to cause the council problems, as unexpected holes open up in budgets and council officers' time is spent firefighting payment issues. Many other councils have proactive approaches which allow them to work with residents who are struggling at an early stage in order to agree pragmatic ways to help people meet their commitments as best they can. This allows the resident a dignified resolution and can also save the council money overall, preventing unexpected losses in revenue. The Lib Dems would like to propose that this issue is referred to the Anti-Poverty Working Group to review how council tax reductions can be handled as part of a joined-up approach to helping our most vulnerable residents, while also protecting the funding needed for vital council services. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm going to just do one more sweep. If anybody else wishes to speak in the chamber. No. David Hicks, anybody wishes to speak?
No.
No. And is that, there's another, oh, that's the same. I think that's Councillor Bishop. So, okay. Councillor Halsall, your turn to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At a time of financial stringency, it is with pride that we are able to do what we are doing. The scheme currently costs 4.1 million. So it is a expensive scheme, and it is because of the sound financial management which we run the council that we are able to do it. We do have a proactive relationship with our council taxpayers, and finance is engaged with any defaulting or slow payers all the time. So I recommend the council tax scheme as it is in the papers. Thank you.
Councillor Kaiser, you have a right to reply.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I mean, this is a scheme to help the most vulnerable in the borough, and I'd be quite happy for it to be referred to the Poverty Working Group if they feel it's something that needs to be looked at. But as the leaders just said, we do it, and we can do it because financially we're fairly sound. There are lots of other ways that we can support people in this borough, and we have done throughout COVID. If you look at the collection rate of our council tax, that should tell you something. We've probably still got the highest council tax collection in the whole of the country. So, and the fact that there's seen a reduction, I would say that we are also deemed to be, and this isn't easy for people who actually live in poverty, but we're deemed to be one of the most prosperous areas in the country. Maybe that explains why we are seeing a reduction in the number of people claiming the scheme. But I recommend this scheme as it is. As I say, it's £4.1 million worth of residents' money that we're spending to help the most vulnerable in the borough. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kaiser. So we'll now move to the vote. I'll just wait until the cue comes in from David Hicks. Can't help thinking there ought to be some music to this.
Thank you. So it's for, against or abstain. So Councillor Akhtar.
For.
Councillor Baker.
Abstain.
Councillor Bath.
For.
Councillor Blumenthal.
For.
Councillor Bowring.
For.
Councillor Boyt.
Abstain.
Councillor Bray. Councillor Burgess.
Abstain.
Councillor Chadwick. Councillor Cheng.
For.
Councillor Dennis.
Abstain.
Councillor Ferris.
Abstain.
Councillor Firmager.
For.
Councillor Fishwick.
Abstain.
Councillor Fruin.
For.
Councillor G.
Abstain.
Councillor Granderson.
For.
Councillor Holsall.
For.
Councillor Hare.
Abstain.
Councillor Howe.
For.
Councillor Jones.
Abstain.
Councillor Norman Jorgensen.
For.
Councillor Pauline Jorgensen.
For.
Councillor John Kaiser.
I'm definitely for, and it's for the most vulnerable people in the borough, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Kerr.
Abstain.
Councillor Lloyd.
For.
Councillor Maher.
Abstain.
Councillor Magetz.
For.
Councillor Mather.
Abstain.
Councillor Mickleborough.
Abstain.
Councillor Monroe.
For.
Councillor Murray.
For.
Councillor Patman.
For.
Councillor Rance.
For.
Councillor Ross.
For.
Councillor Sargent,
For.
Councillor Shenton,
Abstain.
Councillor Imogen Shepherd-Debay,
Abstain.
Councillor Rochelle Shepherd-Debay,
Abstain.
Councillor Caroline Smith,
Abstain.
Councillor Chris Smith, Councillor Wayne Smith,
For.
Councillor Soame,
For.
Councillor Swaddle,
For.
Councillor Eunice.
For.
Recommendations agreed.
Thank you very much. And can I remind people, please don't add comments to your votes. Please don't go down that path. Thank you. So we now move on to item 71, which is the Treasury Management mid-year report. Do we have a proposer?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm proposing it.
Thank you. And a seconder?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Kaiser, would you like to move the report, please?
Yeah, this is basically a Treasury report. This really is reported to council and it allows everybody to see that we're on course with regards to our finances. As you can see, they're in pretty rude health at the moment. I mean, at the end of September 21, the external general fund debt was £416 million, which reduces to £120 million after taking account of our cash balances, that which is net indebtedness. External debt is forecast to reduce to 266 million by the end of the financial year. I recommend this document to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the seconder wish to speak
So
now?
by right.
Thank you very much. So we're now, who wishes to speak, please put your hands up. Just one. In David Hicks' room, anybody in there wishes to speak?
No, thank you.
Thank you. And on Teams, can't see any hands up. Okay, so Councillor Imogen Shepherd-Debay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This Treasury Management mid-year report provides a summary of the Council's level of debt, borrowing and return on our investments. However, this report is not a true full picture. It keeps changing from year to year, seemingly to suit political desires. It is therefore difficult for the layman to get a true and balanced picture of what actually is going on from year to year. We understand the capital programme has been altered to reduce external borrowing. This is generally a good thing, but many of those projects have just been deferred to later years. We cannot see from this report which services are not being delivered as a result. As for the property investments, what we see here may be so. It does not include any income from Wokingham Town Centre regeneration, and I thought that was supposed to be delivering an income by now. Also, we know that Carnival Pool car park was devalued by 1.6 million in the last year. It is not an investment property, but that devaluation is public money that cannot be used for borrowing or against council services. It is not shown in this report, which is what we need for a true picture of how we are performing. In addition, interest rates on borrowing are higher than interest rates on investments, so showing net indebtedness leads to a false sense of security. It is for this reason we cannot agree that this report gives a full picture to residents to judge how well their money is being managed either this year or for comparing from one year to another.
Thank you. Councillor Horsell, you have the right.
I'll be very brief, Mr. Mayor. As councils around the country report increasing financial problems, we are blessed with a good, sound financial management. I would like to thank my deputy leader, John Kaiser, Graham Evers, the finance director of the council, and Daniel Sargent and all the financial team for being able to do this. Our external debt in September 2021 of 416 million and forecast to be reduced to 266 million compares very favourably with the 750 million the opposition has been clamouring for the last 2 years. Our actual net debt forecast by the end of the year is 177 million. not the 750 million. Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. I'm amazed by the financial literacy in this room. Income and savings benefits after finance charges and costs are 2.7 million. This is equivalent to 36.62 per Band D taxpayer, up from 10.22 last year. So I commend this report to the council.
Thank you, Councillor Horsall. So we're now going to move to the vote. So if David Hick. Oh, sorry. Councillor Kaiser.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have much else to say. I think my colleague said it already. I would just add that the average interest rate that we're paying at the moment is 1.5%. Thank you.
Thank you for that, and apologies for. So now we're going to move to the votes. So if the David Hicks people can please make their way to the chamber.
So 4 against or abstention, Councillor Akhtar.
4.
Councillor Baker.
Abstain.
Councillor Bath.
4.
Councillor Blumenthal.
4.
Councillor Bowring.
4.
Councillor Boyt.
4.
Councillor Bray. Councillor Burgess.
4.
Councillor Chadwick. Councillor Cheng.
4.
Councillor Dennis.
Abstain.
Councillor Ferris.
Abstain.
Councillor Firminger.
4.
Councillor Fishwick.
Abstain.
Councillor Fruin.
Abstain.
Councillor G.
Abstain.
Councillor Grandison.
4.
Councillor Holsall.
4.
Councillor Hare.
Abstain.
Councillor Howe.
4.
Councillor Jones.
Abstain.
Councillor Norman Jorgensen.
4.
Councillor Pauline Jorgensen. 4. Councillor Kaiser.
4.
Councillor Kerr.
Abstain.
Councillor Loyes.
4.
Councillor Maher.
Abstain.
Councillor Maggetts.
4.
Councillor Mather.
Abstain.
Councillor Mickleborough.
Abstain.
Councillor Monroe.
4.
Councillor Murray.
4.
Councillor Patman.
4.
Councillor Rance.
4.
Councillor Ross.
4.
Councillor Sargent.
4.
Councillor Shenton.
Abstain.
Councillor Imogen Shepherd-Bay.
Abstain.
Councillor Rochelle Shepherd-Bay.
Abstain.
Councillor Caroline Smith.
Abstain.
Councillor Chris Smith. Councillor Wayne Smith.
4.
Councillor Soane.
4.
Councillor Swaddle.
4.
Councillor Eunice.
4.
Recommendations agreed.
Thank you very much. We'll now move on to agenda item 72, which is the procurement of external audit. We've got 30 minutes on this. Have we a proposer? Thank you, Councillor Sargent, and a seconder.
I'll be seconding it.
Councillor Kaiser, thank you. Can Councillor Sargent please move the report?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item is all to do with how we procure our external audit services. Currently, we do this through the Public Sector Audit Appointments, the PSAA, who duly appointed EY as WBC's external auditor. The very clear recommendation in the paper is that we opt in to procure through the same method in the coming 5-year block. This is also the view of the Audit Committee, which I chair. The rationale is very strong and simple. The large-scale collective procurement service that the PSAA provides will be much cheaper for WBC than the alternatives. Furthermore, if we went it alone and ran a separate procurement exercise, we'd still have very limited influence over the nature and the quality of services provided due to the policy framework that exists for public sector audits. The large majority of councils procured audit through the PSAA last time around, and soundings taken by officers amongst their peers suggest that all Berkshire authorities plan to procure through the PSAA route this cycle. So opting in keeps us in step with neighbouring authorities and keeps open the opportunity for synergies that will hopefully provide. I hope you can all support this recommendation tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Sargent. Councillor Kaiser, do you want to speak now or reserve?
I'll reserve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So can I have hands up? Anybody who wishes to speak on this in the chamber, please? Nope. Anybody in David Hicks that wishes to speak, please?
No, thank you.
Thank you. And anybody on Teams, please indicate no. Okay, so so we go back to the proposer for the right.
Nothing to add.
Sorry. We'll go to the seconder, John Kaiser. Apologies.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I welcome this because it gives us a great opportunity. And I would suggest when our audit's produced that everybody who thinks we aren't doing very well needs to read that audit because they obviously hadn't read the last one. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Sargent, you have nothing to say further. Okay, right. In that case, we will move to the vote, please. We'll wait until the David Hicks people are in.
So 4 against or abstention. Councillor Akhtar.
For.
Councillor Baker.
Abstain.
Councillor Bath.
For.
Councillor Blumenthal.
For.
Councillor Bowering.
For.
Councillor Boyd.
For.
Councillor Bray.
For.
Councillor Burgess.
For.
Councillor Chadwick. Councillor Cheng. For. Councillor Dennis.
For.
Councillor Ferris.
For.
Councillor Firmager.
For.
Councillor Fishwick.
For.
Councillor Fruin.
For.
Councillor G.
I think she's in the toilet, actually.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Granderson.
For.
Councillor Halsall.
For.
Councillor Hare. Councillor Howe.
For.
Councillor Jones.
For.
Councillor Norman Jorgensen.
For.
Councillor Pauline Jorgensen. For. Councillor Kaiser.
For.
Councillor Kerr.
For.
Councillor Loyes.
Abstain.
Councillor Maher.
For.
Councillor McGetts.
For.
Councillor Mather.
For.
Councillor Mickleborough.
For.
Councillor Munro.
For.
Councillor Murray.
For.
Councillor Patman.
For.
Councillor Rance. 4. Councillor Ross.
For.
Councillor Sargent.
For.
Councillor Shenton.
For.
Councillor Imogen Shepherd Bay.
4.
Councillor Rochelle Shepherd Bay.
For.
Councillor Caroline Smith. 4. Councillor Chris Smith. Councillor Wayne Smith.
For.
Councillor Bill Soame.
For.
Councillor Swaddle.
4.
Councillor Eunice.
For.
Recommendation is agreed.
Thank you, everyone. So we'll move on to item 73, which is the appointment of the Town Parish Council representative on the Standards Committee. So who do we have a proposer on this? Councillor Kaiser and a seconder, Councillor Sargent. Councillor Kaiser, could you please move the report?
Yes, thank you very much. I mean, this is to appoint or to co-opt another town and council or parish councillor onto the Standards Board. I think the Standards Board is a very important board. It needs to show that we're all behaving ourselves properly, and also it needs to have people on it from outside the borough council, because only by doing that can we have some form of influence. And we have some unfortunate circumstances with councillors ignoring the process, and I'm hoping that by bringing this other person on board, that might change that somewhat. But it is an important standards all standards are important. We've heard about domestic abuse, and that's all about standards and having the correct level of standards. And so I recommend that this person, who is Sheena Matthews, who is actually a councillor on Early Town Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kaiser. Councillor Sargent, do you want to speak now or reserve your right?
I'll reserve the right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All hands up for those who wish to speak in the chamber. Okay. In David Hicks' room, anybody wishing to speak?
No, thank you.
And is there anybody can't see anybody on Teams? So over to Councillor Jorgensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't intending to speak on this, but I'd just like to support the proposal of Sheena Matthews. I served on Early Town Council with her for quite a while, and she was a very good councillor and extremely fair. And I'm very pleased to see her being proposed.
Thank you, Councillor Jorgensen. I'm just going to do a quick sweep, see if anybody else wants to speak. Councillor Jones.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I too welcome the fact that Sheena Matthews is going to be invited to join the Standards Committee. She is a very diligent town councillor. She will do a very, very good job. She is fair. And I echo what Pauline Jorgensen has just said about her.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Is there anybody in David Hicks, last chance? Nope.
No,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, Luciana. This is another one of these that we potentially is going to be in the chamber only vote. Can I just have confirmation that there's nobody in David Hicks that disagrees with that proposal?
No one disagrees.
Thank you very much. So this will be in the chamber. All those in. Oh. We're getting through this so quickly. Councillor Sargent, have you got a right to reply?
I just want to say that I'm looking forward to welcoming another independent voice on the committee.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, Councillor Kaiser's got the right to reply.
No, I think everybody's endorsed this person, which I'm very happy to hear. Thank you.
Right, thank you. So now we'll go to the vote, being kept honest, which is good. All those in favour, please show. All those against? Any abstentions? Not from myself. All right. I think that is agreed unanimously. Thank you.
Could I have a small point of order? I'm standing up at the moment. When we had the screens in the council chamber, we stopped standing up. And I've noticed this evening some people are standing up and some people are sitting down. Could you give us some guidance about what you wish us to do? Whether you want us to stand up or sit down? Because it's confusing me. Thank you.
I think since we haven't got the barriers, the things in the middle, I think we should go back to standing up. And I thank you for raising it with me, Councillor Bray. Your experience is showing as usual. Thank you. So we then move on to the appointment item, agenda item 74, the appointment to Royal Berkshire Fire Authority. Do we have a proposer? Councillor Ross. And do we have a seconder?
Mr. Mayor.
John Hulsell. Okay. Councillor Ross, you have 3 minutes to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I will stand.
It is important and to me very rewarding to be one of the Borough Council's outside body representatives on the Royal Berkshire Fire Authority. Our fire service is highly regarded nationally and has received very good inspection reports from the Home Office's HMIC FRS, that is Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services. The 20 members from across the county that comprise the Fire Authority have been instrumental in assisting the fire service in Berkshire to reach even higher standards and efficiency. Councillor Anne Chadwick has found that she's unable to take a full part in the authority and has stood down. So it's my pleasure to nominate Councillor Alison Swaddle to replace her. Proved, I'm sure that Alison will find this appointment to be immensely worthwhile. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Household, do you want to speak now or reserve your right?
I reserve my right, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. So anybody wishes to speak to this agenda item, please show. Can't see anybody. Anybody in David Hicks wishes to speak on this one?
No, thank you.
Thank you. And I can't see any hands up on Teams. So therefore we'll go to Councillor Halsall as the seconder to make his speech.
All I would like to say, Mr. Mayor, is that it's with great sadness that Ad Chadwick finds it hard to do this appointment. It's a very valuable appointment for the council, but I'm sure that Alison Swaddle will do it with honour and with pride. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Councillor Ross, you have a right to reply.
Nothing further to say, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So this is another one that potentially we will just vote in the chamber, but I do need to check if there's anybody, David Hicks, that disagrees with that approach.
No, no one.
Thank you. So it will be in the chamber. All those in favour of Councillor Swaddle taking up this role, please show. All those against, please. Any abstentions? It's carried. So Alison Swaddle will take on that role. Thank you very much. So we now move on to item 75, which is a timetable of meetings. Do we have a proposer for that? Councillor
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
And a seconder? Councillor Kaiser. Okay. Councillor Halsall, would you like to move the report, please?
I believe the timetable has been circulated and agreed by all the groups. So I've not really got much more to say and just recommend the timetable to be adopted by the council.
Thank you. The seconder, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right?
No, that being the case, I feel that I have nothing else to say, Mr. Mayor.
Right, okay. Is there anybody in the chamber that wishes to speak? Councillor Jones. Okay. Anybody in David Hicks that wishes to speak on this motion, please?
No, thank you.
And anybody on Teams? I can't see any hands up. So over to you, Councillor Jones.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. For many years, the Liberal Democrats have asked for an extra meeting in January. The Conservatives refused for many years, but changed their mind this year. We welcome this change and we are pleased that we have a very full agenda this evening. As you know only too well, Mr. Mayor, there have been a number of full council meetings in the last year that have been somewhat fractious, usually due to there not being enough time to get through the council's business. Sadly, the ruling group on too many occasions have stifled debate and not agreed to an extension of time from 10:30 until 11. Motions that have been delayed, sometimes for nearly a year, have included committing the council to supporting free school meals during school holidays. Liberal Democrats believe that councillors should bring motions to the council and that there must be an opportunity to debate them. We would like to see another council meeting in October. I'm sure there would be a full agenda for this meeting. Councillors have a right and a duty to hold the council's ruling group to account by asking questions at full council meetings and specific ward questions. The leader of the council himself, on occasion, has said his group won't be asking any questions because he wants the meeting to finish at 10:30 and not be extended until 11. If there was an extra meeting in October, this would not be necessary. That's not the correct way to conduct the council's business. Residents are rightly frustrated at the antics of the ruling Conservatives. Therefore, should the Liberal Democrats be given the opportunity to be put in charge of the council by residents on the 5th of May, we would add at least one extra full council meeting to this timetable of meetings. This will enable there to be more time for democratic debate and opportunities for councillors of all parties to hold the executive to account through questions and motions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Can I just clarify something? Are you actually proposing this extra meeting in October, or is it just a comment?
It's just a comment, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for the clarity. Let me just do one more quick sweep. Anybody else wishes to speak? Anybody in David Hicks' room? And no hands up. So therefore, seconder, you wish to speak, please?
Not really. I just didn't understand some of the stuff that Clive was saying. Clive, what could you just expand on what you were saying about free school meals? I thought that was something that we
Excuse me,
agreed.
Councillor Kaiser, this isn't a discussion group, I'm afraid. I'll ask him later. Thank you. So,
Happy to talk to you afterwards, John.
please do. And the proposer, right to reply?
I too was amazed by the non sequitur nature of the speech made by the leader of the opposition and the inappropriateness of that speech at that time. I would remind you that the antics of the opposition during the course of the last 2 years has been surprising. So I'd just like to conclude this agenda item by proposing the timetable of meetings, which I believe has been agreed by all the groups. And thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So we'll now move on to the vote. Just need to wait for the people in David Hicks to come through.
It's 4 against or abstention. So Councillor Akhtar.
4.
Councillor Baker.
Abstain.
Councillor Ba.
4.
Councillor Blumenthal.
4.
Councillor Bowring.
4.
Councillor Boyt.
4.
Councillor Bray.
4.
Councillor Burgess.
4.
Councillor Chadwick. Councillor Cheng.
4.
Councillor Dennis.
4.
Councillor Ferris.
4.
Councillor Firmager.
4.
Councillor Fishwick.
4.
Councillor Fruin.
4.
Councillor G.
4.
Councillor Granderson.
4.
Councillor Holsall.
4.
Councillor Hare.
4.
Councillor Howe.
4.
Councillor Jones.
4.
Councillor Norman Jorgensen.
4.
Councillor Pauline Jorgensen.
4.
Councillor Kaiser.
4.
Councillor Kerr.
4.
Councillor Loyes.
Abstention.
Councillor Maher.
4.
Councillor Maggetts.
4.
Councillor Mather.
4.
Councillor Mickleby.
4.
Councillor Monroe.
4.
Councillor Murray.
4.
Councillor Patman.
4.
Councillor Rance. 4. Councillor Ross.
4.
Councillor Sargent.
4.
Councillor Shenton.
4.
Councillor Imogen Shepherd-Debay.
4.
Councillor Rochelle Shepherd-Debay.
4.
Councillor Caroline Smith.
4.
Councillor Chris Smith. Councillor Wayne Smith.
4.
Councillor Bill Soane.
4.
Councillor Swaddle. 4. Councillor Eunice.
4.
So that has been carried. Thank you very much. So we're now moving on to the item, agenda item 76, the white ribbon motion. We have 30 minutes duration on this. Do we have a proposer? Councillor Blumenthal. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Eunice. So I'm going to invite Councillor Blumenthal to move the report, please.
Thank you. I'd like to also the second recommendation so that the officers' recommendations go to the executive so it gets the public scrutiny it deserves. It's already been circulated, the wording, it's on the lilac paper.
Thank you. So we'll go straight to the vote on this one. Now I'm planning to do just in the chamber, but I just want to check that that's acceptable in the David Hicks. Is there anybody in David Hicks that disagrees with just doing a chamber vote?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Right, so all those in favour, please show. All those against? All those abstaining? So that one's carried. So would you like to carry on?
Thank you. I'd like to thank the members of the Cross-Party Equalities Working Group for proposing the recommendations in this report. There was one key theme we all identified, and that was the need for the Council to improve its communications on what it's doing to support victims of violence and how it's promoting culture change around domestic abuse and harassment. We know there's an appetite, as there is a front page story all about the trauma training that the Council is introducing on the front page of the weekend paper. This is why exploring how we can improve our communications on this important issue is one of the main recommendations. It's not enough to do the work. It's not enough to have the provision. We need to shout about it, and widely. Not just targeting people who may benefit from support, but also broadcasting to all residents how committed we are as a council to this issue and the actions we're taking to promote culture change and improve service provision. We know that households are squeezed, so want to assure them that we're spending their council tax money responsibly, supporting the most vulnerable. We also discussed that our culture change training and support for victims of violence is broad, tailored to cover various demographics. We're an inclusive council and need to provide for a wide variety of people. This led us to decide that although we support White Ribbon, its accreditation was too narrow, only covering male violence against women and didn't show the quality of provision, and that a more comprehensive accreditation would be more appropriate, one that could give the council grade on performance, would help raise standards and show residents a true picture of quality. The council is already planning on attaining domestic abuse housing accreditation, which shows residents the tangible standards the council has attained. For example, a high standard on perpetrator management, accessibility, policy, and working with partners. This is why we've recommended council officers explore more comprehensive available accreditations that could show our residents a true picture of our performance with a wider scope to reflect the inclusivity of our provision. This will be taken to the executive for review. Nevertheless, I've met with White Ribbon alongside the leader of the council and officers, and the council is actively exploring using the organisation's expertise to take part in the council's monthly domestic violence training programme for frontline staff. We look forward to working with White Ribbon. We also recommend that the leader of the council write to the Home Secretary and others listed in the motion to support public sexual harassment being made a specific offence. And this is to go further in highlighting that only deeper cultural change will bring about true improvement. The Executive Member for Children's Services has already written to schools asking them to explain what they're doing to safeguard children from public sexual harassment as laid out as mandatory in Department of Education policy. This is business as usual, and Councillor Rebecca Margetts said that these letters would be sent in her speech at Council in November. Within just a few weeks of our last Council meeting, we met with White Ribbon, are exploring working with them, and have got the Equalities Group to make recommendations after reviewing our existing training and culture change work. And we have a strong plan to publicise and strengthen our commitment against violence and harassment in our borough. and I'd encourage all members to support the recommendations.
Thank you. Just in time. So, does the seconder wish to speak now or reserve the right, please?
I'll reserve my right.
Thank you. So we're now going to ask, anybody who wishes to speak to this motion, please raise their hands.
I've actually got an amendment, please. Thank you.
We have two in here. Anybody, three. Anybody in David Hicks that wishes to speak?
No, thank you.
And I see there's one Councillor Cunnington on Teams to speak. So I'm going to go to Councillor Kerr first.
Well, it's an amendment. Could it be circulated, please? Thank you.
I came to you. Can I ask if anyone wishes to have an adjournment to?
I was going to request, can we have an adjournment? There's quite a lot of text here. Thank you.
Right. How long do you think you need?
10 minutes should be
Right.
sufficient.
So you need to propose, we've got to propose and second it and vote on it first. So
I'll
I guess you're
propose it.
proposing it. Who's going to second it? Councillor Jorgensen. Does that have to be a recorded vote? Yeah. Okay. So just before we have that vote, Councillor Kerr, would you like to speak to your amendment, please?
Thank you very much. I remain angry that the white ribbon motion proposed by Councillor Hare in the last full council meeting was not unequivocally approved. I'm also angry that after a group of us collectively wrote to Councillor Halsall about the council taking action to address and eradicate the cultural norms in society that lead to violence against women, he's not had the decency to even respond. To the public watching this meeting, what we warned would happen has come to fruition. A private group where no members of the public can watch or even see minutes of has pulled apart the intention of the motion and watered it down so much that it's not even about ending male violence against women. It doesn't deserve the name White Ribbon Motion because it does not mention tackling male violence against women even once in it. We are incredibly supportive of the action suggested to tackle domestic abuse. Domestic abuse and the aims of White Ribbon are not the same thing, though. The recommendations in front of us are a case of whataboutery. Domestic abuse, whilst disproportionately affecting women, isn't exclusively male violence towards women. There are male victims. There is violence in same-sex relationships. The recommendations presented tonight do nothing to change the deep-rooted misogynistic culture we have that led to the deaths of Sarah Everard and Aisling Murphy and countless other victims. This amendment is a necessity because if we do not take action, we are condemning women to preventable violence. I do not agree with what has been said this evening, that we are advanced in what we're doing on this. It's not true. And even if it was, all the White Ribbon accreditation would do is it would provide us with a gap analysis. We could actually look and see what we're doing well, where we have gaps, and we can then look to implement that. And that could be done through the Equalities Working Group. It's very simple. And I think I worked out the cost of doing the accreditation is £68.50 per council member in this chamber. Well, I will stump up that money, and I hope the rest of you will too. As the opposition, when we are presented with motions and recommendations from the ruling group, we look for reasons to support. We have demonstrated this tonight. We will do what is in the best interest of our communities, irrespective of whose idea it is. For the sake of all the women out there who are fed up of being told to change their behaviours and actions to avoid violence from men, I simply ask that the ruling group reciprocate. Instead of turning down motions, amendments and recommendations because they're being presented by the opposition, look for reasons to support. It is in the best interest of those we are elected to represent. I hope this amendment passes. Thank you.
And Councillor Kerr, have you got a seconder?
I do. Councillor Rachel Burgess.
And Councillor Burgess, do you want to speak now? Or
I'll speak now, please.
sorry, I'm getting instructions here. Yeah, right. So we now then move into, we have to vote on the request for an adjournment for 10 minutes, proposed by Councillor Blumenthal and seconded by Councillor Jorgensen, Pauline Jorgensen. So I just will need to, does this have to be a recorded vote or not? Can it be just chamber vote? Yeah. I just need to check with David Hicks. Are they comfortable with us just doing a chamber vote?
Yes.
Thank you. So all those in favour of the 10-minute adjournment, please show. Thank you. All those against? Abstention? Thank you. That's passed. So by my computer clock, it's 21:11. So we will reconvene at 21:21, please. And can I ask you to be back here promptly? I will start it at 21:21. So the first step is to ask if the Councillor Blumenthal accepts the amendment, yes or no?
No.
Okay, so we will debate the amendment. The seconder, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right?
I reserve my right, please.
I'll speak now, thank you.
It's the proposer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I welcomed this issue being brought back before us this evening, and I was optimistic that Councillor Blumenthal and the rest of the Conservative group would want to work with the opposition on something so important. First, the original motion is entitled White Ribbon, but it doesn't mention white ribbon specifically at all. Instead, the focus seems to be initially on domestic violence, a related but entirely separate issue. The Council should be clearly and unequivocally recognising the importance of working with men and boys to end the violence against women and girls by specifically seeking white ribbon accreditation, something so many other councils have done, and something which we could all be proud of as a council. And the importance of education of our young people can't be overstated. I welcome the original motion's request that the executive member would write to local schools, but we need to go further. Working with young people, and specifically young men, is vitally important in preventing violence against women. We need separate policies on this in schools and specific educational programmes within PSHE to tackle it early on. I was glad the Conservatives brought this motion back this evening, and I was hopeful that they would be willing to work with the opposition to strengthen the wording of the motion. I would still urge all councillors to support this amendment this evening, as we are surely all united in our vision to end male violence and harassment of women and girls. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burgess. So I'm going to ask in the chamber who wishes to speak to this amendment. Please show your hands. Councillor Jorgensen and Councillor Blumenthal. Anybody in the David Hicks room that wishes to speak to this amendment?
Yes, Councillor Boyd would like to speak.
Okay, and anybody on Teams wishes to speak to this amendment? Okay, can't see any there. So we've got. So I'm going to go to Councillor here. We've got you as well. So Councillor Jorgensen, would you like to speak to the amendment, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't intending to speak on this before this amendment, but I will speak now. I would just like to point out that when Conservative female members of this committee proposed extending at a previous meeting this motion to include as members such as ethnic minorities and disabled people in the domestic violence definition, rather than just talking about women, that Sarah, and these are people that Sarah Kerr agreed were also subject to domestic violence. She said, and I quote, on Facebook afterwards, "It was a woman Tory who put the amendment in to throw it into the long grass. She must have been coerced into this, because why would you do such a thing?" She says that women are not entitled to their own opinions unless they agree with her, it appears. That was outrageous then, and it is outrageous now.
Thank you. Councillor Hare.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree that domestic violence occurs against both sexes. My son was badly abused by a male perpetrator who then went to prison, and I too have suffered. But what the charity White Ribbon is working on is encouraging men to stand up and be counted to help stop violence, whether that be physical, verbal, sexual, emotional, financial, and spiritual violence against women. White Ribbon is working to end all violence against women, not just domestic violence. It must be part of this council's remit to take action in order to prevent all violence against women. And I say that this is a valid motion, but we have put it in motion if it were just about domestic violence, but it does not address the specific focus of White Ribbon. And so we have made the amendment to include that as well, because you cannot duck and dive with this issue. This council needs to face the fact that women have suffer violence from men, and men need to stand up and speak out against it. I personally think that this amendment will do much to make broader the council's stand against violence. Yes, as I said, there is violence against men, there's heterosexual violence, there's homosexual violence, there's violence against ethnic minorities. But we need to stand up, stand with women, and say we must stop violence by men against women, because that is the vast majority of it. And this amendment takes that into consideration.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Blumenthal.
Thank you. Well, we're all the way back to square one, aren't we? Councillor Burgess said that she's disappointed that we're not more collaborative. And I really don't know how we could be more collaborative, not only just on the anti-abuse charter that we debated today, but with the Equalities Working Group, which is cross-party. We voted, it was democratic, to take on the recommendations of the Equalities Working Group. And when I put at the end of the meeting, if members, which Imogen Shepherd-Dupay is part of, Shirley Voigt, Jim Fruin, are they unhappy with anything here at all? There was nothing. I circulated on email the recommendations in Word to see if they were happy with it before it got printed in the report, and again, nothing back. I actually circulated to the leaders of the different parties what I wanted to change, and I got nothing back. And then we've got this massive change today, all of a surprise. It's not all that collaborative at all. And the thing is, we're working with White Ribbon. I don't know how many more times we can say this. Like, we've met with them. They're fantastic. We support them. They're going to be giving training to our staff. I've told you about how we just don't want to duplicate work. It's not that we're against tackling a culture of male violence against women. We are. We've got an established domestic abuse training program they're going to be part of. It's just we're not going to duplicate work, and we want to be more comprehensive in another accreditation. We want an accreditation, but one that is comprehensive. And I do support what Councillor Jorgensen said about how it's been really disappointing seeing the sexism and misogyny from the Liberal Democrats. I was so disappointed, especially what was in the Bracknell News, that Councillor Hare said it was the Conservatives that got their women to be against the amendment and to change it, the original one. And considering the opposition say that they're against sexism and misogyny, they can sure dish it out when it's politically purposeful for them. And finally, how dare you use the names of Aisling Murphy and Sarah Everard to make a cheap political point?
Have you got a point of order, Councillor? Okay, you're booked in. Councillor Cunnington on Teams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to speak tonight to thank Councillor Blumenthal for her determination and resilience in bringing us to this place. I'm surprised, having thought that the cross-party have lined up behind us to support the excellent work that's been set underway by the Borough Council since long before the White Ribbon motion was put forward. And the text of the original motion was agreed that by a cross-party motion. So I'm really surprised that the amendment has been put forward by the Liberal Democrats this evening. I'm particularly disappointed because of the unacceptable disrespect and misogynistic abuse that was aimed towards female Conservative members in the immediate aftermath of the motion being amended last November in the Chamber and subsequently on social media. Much of it stemming, it seems, from a lack of understanding of what the council was already doing and trying to achieve, or might most likely a desire to make a big political statement. I trust that once we have got through this storm, that a campaign on social media will be undertaken to support and promote the outcome provided by the cross-party working group and led by Councillor Blumenthal and the work of the team within Wokingham Borough Council. I've got significant experience of domestic abuse in my personal and professional life, like others have declared here. Both domestic violence, mental abuse against women and against men. And domestic violence is often at the core of the learning of these kind of behaviours. As a new councillor, I was pleased by the council's employment of a high quality domestic violence officer. And I'm supportive of their aims and the programme that's in the process of being enacted within the council, including continued raising of awareness amongst council staff and councillors. I look forward to the training that's been mentioned, not only on the symptoms, but also on bystander action, empowerment to speak out, raising of concerns for others, training. Some might ask, why are you putting emphasis on training? Well, I take the view that if you have to ask yourself if something is wrong or if you should act or report, you certainly should. But I recognise it's not necessarily second nature to everybody. Plus, I think we all need reminding. We should educate and open the eyes and minds of all those within the council to the horrors, symptoms and actions that should be high in our conscious and our subconscious. I believe we need to allow the council to deliver its domestic abuse strategy and for the equalities team to deliver the training that I mentioned. I think that the White Ribbon campaign is one of the groups the council will be engaging with, and this represents their campaign against male violence on women. However, I'm also pleased to note the wider consultation that's been proposed. It's fair to say that in my experiences, I feel a chill with every instance of domestic violence or abuse that I have been made aware
Councillor
of.
Cunnington, your time is up, I'm afraid. Sorry. Thank you. Councillor Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yeah, I just want to say, as a member of the cross-party working group, that broadly, I am in favour of what has been set out. However, I did actually say in the meeting that I was concerned that we were still focusing very much on domestic abuse, and the fact that we have a very good domestic abuse policy going through, strategy going through in council, which I am proud of, and I think it's a great thing. But I just feel that there should be more emphasis on the education and getting across to young men and boys about misogyny and abusive behaviours and patterns of behaviour. And I did actually say in the meeting that concerned me. And that I felt that we hadn't quite gone far enough, and that this would become a very emotional subject again in this council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Boyd. Councillor Bray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm someone who likes to try and see the best in people. So although it's a bit of a struggle this evening, given some of the things that have been said during this debate, my view on this is that the disagreement on this White Ribbon motion from the Conservatives is actually coming from a position of ignorance rather than a position of opposition to curing violence against women and girls, and not ignorance of the significance of violence or anything like that, but ignorance about what the White Ribbon campaign actually is, because your whole speeches are directed about domestic violence. We've already agreed the anti-abuse charter this evening, which is extremely important. And domestic violence is extremely important. But the White Ribbon campaign is not just about domestic abuse. It's actually about all the other things that happen to women and girls. It's not about us saying there are male victims as well. It's actually about men taking responsibility to try and end the epidemic of violence against women and girls. That does include the murder of Sarah Everard, which was not a domestic abuse incident. It includes sexting in schools. It includes all the wolf whistles, the hands up the skirts, the rubbing up against you on the tube, the hitting, the nonsense that goes on, that every woman experiences that never wants to walk home by herself in the dark. That's what we need to end. That isn't domestic abuse, that's something else. And unfortunately, in refusing to accept the amendment, you are limiting this council to looking at domestic abuse. That is the point of difference between us. I don't believe you want women and girls to be treated badly. I think you are mistaken because you haven't thought this through. So I would urge you to think again. This is about more than domestic abuse. It's about men taking responsibility to change a culture which results in an epidemic of violence against women and girls. So please reconsider your language of disrespect which you have used this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bray. Councillor Fruin.
Thank you. I have to say that I'm disappointed with all the political parties here tonight, all of you. This is an important and an emotive topic, and the political point scoring does nobody any good at all. It doesn't do this council any good at all. We have a cross-party working group where no party politics have been played. We've had open discussions on this. If you want to get things done and do things differently, let's use the cross-party working group to actually get to action rather than sitting in this emotive mess that we seem to get ourselves into. I'm actually ashamed again of this council.
Thank you, Councillor Fruin. I'm just going to have one further sweep before we move to a vote. Anybody else wishing to speak in the chamber? Anybody in the David Hicks room wishing to speak?
No, thank you.
And anybody on Teams? Nope. So we're going to have, normally we would go back to the proposal of the original motion, Councillor Blumenthal, but as Councillor Blumenthal has already spoken, we're going to go straight to the vote on the amendment. This is voting on the amendment. It will be recorded vote.
Sorry, doesn't the proposal of the amendment get a right of reply?
No.
Okay.
While we're waiting, can I say, by the way, I extended the debate by 10 minutes, so the adjournment did not lose 10 minutes on the 30 minutes.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, can I ask for clarification? Are we voting for the version on the yellow paper?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's
To
the
make it
amendment.
clear. Thank you.
Against.
Keith Baker.
Abstain.
Councillor Barr.
Against.
Councillor Blumenthal.
Again.
Councillor Bowering.
Against.
Councillor Boyd.
For.
Councillor Bray.
For.
Councillor Burgess.
For.
Councillor Chadwick. Councillor Cheng.
Against.
Councillor Dennis.
For.
Councillor Ferris.
Against.
Councillor Ferris.
For.
Councillor Firmager.
Against.
Councillor Fishwick.
For.
Councillor Fruin.
For.
Councillor G.
For.
Councillor Granderson.
Against.
Councillor Halsall.
Against.
Councillor Hare.
For.
Councillor Howe.
Against.
Councillor Jones.
For.
Councillor Norman Jorgensen.
Against.
Councillor Pauline Jorgensen.
Against.
Councillor Kaiser.
Against.
Councillor Kerr.
For.
Councillor Loys.
Abstention.
Councillor Maher.
For.
Councillor McGetts.
Against.
Councillor Mather.
For.
Councillor Mickleby.
For.
Councillor Monroe.
Against.
Councillor Murray.
Against.
Councillor Patman.
Against.
Councillor Rance.
Against.
Councillor Ross.
Against.
Councillor Sargent.
Against.
Councillor Shenton.
For.
Councillor Imogen Shepherd-de-Bay.
For.
Councillor Rochelle Shepherd-de-Bay.
For.
Councillor Caroline Smith.
For.
Councillor Chris Smith. Councillor Wayne Smith.
Against.
Councillor Bill Soane.
Against.
Councillor Alison Swaddle.
Against.
Councillor Shepherd Yunus.
Against.
So the amendment has fallen, I'm afraid. We go back to the substantive motion, but as we've run out of time, we will go to another vote. Sorry. Right. Okay. Proposer of the substantive motion now gets a right to reply, which is your original motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I completely support everything that Councillor Fruin said. He is becoming a true statesman of our council, and I think a motion to make him president of the world will probably come here one day. So thank you, Councillor Fruin. I'm going to reiterate, we're going to be working with White Ribbon. They're a fantastic organisation. The leader of the council, myself, officers spent time with them. They explained clearly exactly what they're all about, exactly how they change culture of male violence towards women. We're going to use them in training. They're going to change things. It's going to be fantastic. But because we've done so much work, they agreed with us. We don't need to go back to the drawing board with them for an action plan and to set up a steering committee and pay £1,000 for a logo on a website. It's nonsensical. We need to protect residents' money and add proportionate value, and that's not the right way about it. The Lib Dems' original motion called for White Ribbon accreditation, so it's natural for them to keep pressing for it. I'm not naive, it's politics, I understand it, but it's not the right thing to do. We've supported all the other asks in your motions, so we've been as collaborative as possible. I really don't know what else we could have done. And we are so committed to stamping out harassment, and I support Shirley Boyd's point about harassment in schools, and we're going to be working with teachers later this year about harassment in schools and public sexual harassment to try to breed a better culture there to catch them young, which should hopefully help. And we've got our equalities programme, which is all about harassment and aggressions and doing things they shouldn't be. And also, I'm a woman, as we've got loads of women in this council. They get it. We've got women in the Conservative group, believe it or not. We get it. We really, truly do. So we're going to be working hard to stay committed to this really important issue. And I would just hope we're more united, because I do think a lot of our residents would be aghast at what's happened tonight. I know I am. So I would just encourage members to support the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move on to the vote. It's a recorded vote now on the substantive motion.
Councillor Akhtar.
For.
Councillor Baker.
Abstain.
Councillor Bath.
For.
Councillor Blumenthal.
For.
Councillor Bowring.
For.
Shirley. Councillor Boyd.
Abstain.
Councillor Bray. Councillor Burgess.
Abstain.
Councillor Chadwick. Councillor Cheng.
For.
Councillor Dennis.
Abstain.
Councillor Ferris.
Abstain.
Councillor Firmager.
For.
Councillor Fishwick.
Abstain.
Councillor Fruin.
For.
Councillor G.
Against, just not good enough.
Councillor Granderson.
For.
Councillor Hossell.
For.
Councillor Hare.
Abstain.
Councillor Howe.
For.
Councillor Jones.
Abstain.
Councillor Norman Jorgensen.
For.
Councillor Pauline Jorgensen.
For.
Councillor Kaiser.
For.
Councillor Kerr.
Abstain.
Councillor Loyes.
Abstain.
Councillor Maher.
Abstain.
Councillor Magetz.
For.
Councillor Mather.
Abstain.
Councillor Mickleboe.
Abstain.
Councillor Monroe.
For.
Councillor Murray.
For.
Councillor Patman.
For.
Councillor Rance.
For. Sorry.
Councillor Ross.
For.
Councillor Sargent.
For.
Councillor Shenton,
Abstain.
Councillor Imogen Shepherd-Bay,
Abstain.
Councillor Rochelle Shepherd-Bay,
Abstain, not good enough.
Councillor Caroline Smith,
Abstain.
Councillor Chris Smith, Councillor Wayne Smith,
For.
Councillor Bill Stone,
For.
Councillor Swaddle,
Or.
Councillor Eunice.
For. So the motion has been approved. Thank you very much. Can I remind councillors for the second time tonight, please do not add comments to your vote. It doesn't add anything to the debate. If anything, it shows you as an individual up to the people who are watching. So please, I know emotions are running high. When you do your vote, please do not add a comment. Thank you. So we're now moving on to the member questions. We've got 30 minutes on this. The first question is Councillor Cowan, who is on Teams. Please ask your question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The council's plan to tackle climate change contains the following: reduce carbon dioxide emissions from transport, create a local plan that specifies net zero construction and infrastructure, increases the levels of carbon sequestration and the borough through greening the environment, engage with young people and support sustainable schools, and encourage behaviour change. Part of the Arborfield Green Planning Permission was to provide 2 primary schools for the new occupants, and had the developer not agreed, planning permission would have been quite rightly refused. When the primary school was nearer completion, Woking Borough Council's Children's Services agreed to shut Farley Hill School and move it in its entirety to the new school location at Arborfield Green, even calling it Farley Hill Primary School, so denying children living directly outside the school gates access to this new school. As a result of this decision, all the primary school aged children in Arborfield Green, I believe it's probably 70, have had to be driven to surrounding primary schools, while many who attended Farley Hill now have a much longer drive to the new school. How does this fit in with the 5 bullet points in the council's plan to tackle climate emergency? Thank you.
Thank you. I understand Councillor Howe's going to be answering this one.
I'm not as pretty as Councillor Murray, but I'll do my best. Thank you for your question, Councillor Cowan. At a strategic level, our planning of the borough's strategic development locations, or SDLs, can be underpinned by principles of creating sustainable communities that can sustain local access to services and amenities while minimising the need to travel. This is also underpinned by sustainable transport options both within the SDLs and with the existing main town areas. As you rightly point out, ensuring primary school provision to meet future anticipated need within these new communities has always been a key priority. And although predating our climate emergency, fully in line with the principles of sustainable development by reducing the need to travel and minimising carbon footprint. Of course, at a detailed level, at any point in time, there's a changing pattern of primary provision, and seeking to balance demand versus school places available across the system is not an exact science. For many years, the Farley Hill Primary School has been one of the 2 schools serving the homes associated with the Arborfield Garrison, what is now the Arborfield Green and associated Finchwood Park areas. Relocating the Farley Hill Primary School to this site meant that children living in these areas, the majority of the children are on the roll, attending the school have an opportunity to walk, scoot or cycle to school. Previously, a very small number of children living in Farley Hill Village itself could easily travel to the school sustainably. The relocation has therefore significantly reduced school run traffic, and the reduction has a beneficial impact on reducing CO2 emissions. In addition, it is proposed that the school expands to 2 full forms of entry, and with the enlarged school
I'm
growth.
sorry, councillor Howe, you've run out of
Done it
time.
again.
So councillor Cowan, do you have a supplementary?
Yeah, I think I would challenge that. As I said, the planning regulations are, if they said, no, we're not building the schools there, A, the school wouldn't be there, but neither would the houses. On top of the utter stupidity of denying children access to a school where the child lives directly opposite the gate, how does the council square the climate emergency circle when other departments approve trees being cut down, including ones with TPOs on them, to facilitate development, and also approve development that allows extra vehicles on roads which the council already recognises as being over capacity? My question is, should all the council's departments be promoting the climate emergency aims, or is it okay to ignore it when a few houses are in the offing? Thank you.
Councillor Howe.
Well, there's a mix of disciplines in there, isn't there? And I'm responsible for children's services and schools. And what I would say to you is this, that we are making change and we're undergoing consultation in order to change the catchment area, to make it more walkable to those schools, to make them more accessible. And I would also say that from a point of view of education, we've had a programme now running for about 18 months to put solar on schools. And it's very much part of schools' curriculum now. Schools' curriculum, by the way, is set by the schools' commissioners. Most of the schools are academies. So you can't command what the curriculum may be, but we are trying to influence that by bringing down the cost of their electricity very visibly. And there are other motions in play as well.
Yeah.
That's enough.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, councillor Cowan. Councillor Akhtar, would you like to step forward in David Hicks to ask your question?
Thank you, Chair. My question is for the Executive Member for Neighbourhoods and Communities. In Charville Village, I've had some issues with graffiti and have attempted to get this removed. However, I was informed by WBC that their policy is to only remove graffiti which is offensive. Could you confirm why this policy is in place and if the council will consider changing to include non-offensive graffiti in order to keep our borough graffiti free? Thank you.
Councillor Son.
Thank you very much. I will point out, contrary to appearances, I am standing up, but thank you very much, Sam, for your question. I too actually put this to our teams about graffiti because we had an issue like this in Woodley. And I was given exactly the same answer, that they concentrate on removing offensive graffiti first. And I will say that within a short space of time, the graffiti that I was referring to, which wasn't offensive, was removed. Obviously, the amount of graffiti around the borough, let's say it's not extensive, but it's there, and we do have a team to do it. And I think we do a good job. And I think to concentrate and put all their efforts into removing the offensive graffiti first is an absolute must. I do take the point that all graffiti should be removed at some point, and it is, and I know that the team are working its way through to get this done.
Councillor Akhtar, do you have a supplementary?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rachel Shepherd-Dubé, you have a question.
Yes, when is the safety audit on the Woodward Close entrance expected to be finished and the safety problems of the entrance finally fixed for the residents of Woodward Close?
Councillor Jorgensen.
Oh, sorry, I'm standing up as well, honestly. Thank you for the question. Pardon? Yeah, remember, the only person ever towered over is the Queen Mother, but anyway. The safety audit was completed in November and comments from the auditors confirmed there is no safety issue on the ramp. The purpose of the raised table is to highlight the busy shared area to use for crossing and to slow traffic down as they get across. The ramp up should not be changed as this is what dictates the driver's behaviour to slow down. The speed limit's 30 miles an hour and drivers are expected to slow down as they manage to turn into Woodward Close. The down ramp in its current state does not cause a safety issue. However, we acknowledge that the down ramp from Reading Road to Woodward Close appears to be slightly more abrupt than others in the area, and some drivers have reported experiencing a greater bump as a result. The aspect has been raised with the contractor and they're having ongoing discussions with them with the best way to find a remedy to this reported problem. A site meeting has been set up and now we've had it with the WBC project manager for the scheme with councillors Paul Fishwick, Rochelle, I don't think you made it, and Prue Bray, and I was there separately, but I missed everybody else, to discuss this problem and what options are available to remedy it. I talked to the officer after that meeting. It's quite obvious that the road dips down towards the hump, which is what's causing the problem. The road surface is also not good enough in my view. There's a crack down it, which I think is exacerbated by the water and the recent cold weather. I've talked to the project manager. He's hoping that the fix will be done in the first quarter of this year, but obviously it depends a bit on the weather because if it's wet or frozen, they can't resurface and they're going to have to resurface a bit of the road. But it's in hand. I assure you it will be done. And if you've got any more questions, please feel free to contact me.
Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I'd like to thank you at least for doing something for the residents finally. I'd like to see why the health and safety audit took so long though, because it apparently, if it was available in November, no one seemed to be able to find it in December at all. So just curious.
To be honest, Rochelle, I haven't seen the safety audit, so I don't know. The fact that it said that it wasn't a health and safety issue probably means that that's why I didn't see it. But as I reiterate, I think the problem is actually with the way the road attaches itself to the hump and the various angles. And there's definitely a problem, and we'll definitely get it fixed.
Thank you. Councillor Shirley Boyd, would you like to ask your question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Lily May Court is an affordable development in my ward under a shared ownership arrangement. It has emerged that these properties weren't constructed in accordance with planning conditions and mitigation intended to reduce the impact of noise from haulage yards was not installed. Furthermore, a covenant regarding the yards and the mitigation went undisclosed at the point of sale. When the residents complained to their provider about intolerable noise and pollution from the haulage yards, they were treated with contempt and told they were not allowed to complain about the hauliers and should keep their windows closed. It has finally been accepted now that a breach of planning has taken place, but the provider is now pressurising the residents to accept the mitigation. However, the majority of residents would never have bought into these properties had they been given the full facts at the point of sale, and have requested the properties are bought back by the provider who has refused. The provider, Housing Solutions, is a preferred registered provider of WBC. So my question is, what pressure can WBC exert to encourage this provider to buy back these flats to enable these families to move on with their lives?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Boyd. As you're aware, the council has been in close contact with the residents in Lily May Court and Housing Solutions, and we're committed to doing all we can to improve the living conditions. We have ensured that the developer is in a position to retrospectively take steps to comply with the original planning conditions to mitigate against noise. We have served a notice on the adjacent haulage company adjacent to the dwelling to ensure that the best practicable means are taken at all times to minimise the escape of dust from the site and minimise air pollution. We have installed air quality monitoring equipment adjacent to the property to ensure that the air quality is suitable, and we will be getting the results from that in the end of January. At the end of January, it would, however, be inappropriate, or more to the point, it is not possible for the council to interfere with the contractual position between the residents and the housing association, who are joint owners of property. We will be happy to explore and discuss with Housing Solutions the future management options on these properties given these issues, while not wanting to interfere with our contractual agreement with the residents. I would also add that we will be reviewing all the registered providers this year who provide affordable homes in the borough, and this will be one of the issues on the table.
Do you have a supplementary?
Thank you. Yeah, I do. By way of an addition, really. As a member of TLIP, I know that our housing officers provide a very high level of service especially when it comes to listening to tenants and resolving complaints. They also conduct regular monitoring via the STAR survey. And it seems to me that we set a very far higher standard for ourselves than we do for the preferred providers. And shouldn't all the borough's tenants residing in the affordable social housing, irrespective of the provider, have the same expectations?
I fully agree with you. And in fact, the registered providers should have a head start on us because they're supplying brand new homes. We are putting tenants into homes that are older properties, but we manage to maintain 100% decency. And yes, it's a question that will be asked of them when we speak to them again. I mean, we can't do much more. Our hands are tied. I mean, interesting fact of life is everybody goes on. Lib Democrats go on about building 300 homes per year in the country. I think the Labour Party 250,000 homes they go on about. But at the end of the day, that's never happened since councils have been stopped building homes.
Absolutely. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Councillor Rance, you have a question for Councillor Howe.
Yes, could you give me an update on the situation with sixth form provision in the south of the borough?
Thank you, Councillor Rance, and I'll try and be succinct. The Wokingham South planning area is served by 6 schools, 4 of which have sixth forms. These co-educational sixth forms are accessible to residents across the area and have been judged good by Ofsted. Students from this area also choose schools and colleges outside of the borough, despite having choices in the area. However, the council is keen to see an expansion of post-16 provision in South Wokingham, for which there is strong local support. I know that you're one of them. The Bowhunt School at Wokingham is keen to provide this expansion. The post-16 element of secondary strategy is now focused for consultation, and we hope to have that finished soon. The notional funding to enable post-16 expansion will be included in the medium-term financial plan, which is coming before executive in February.
Thank you.
Finish.
Councillor Rance, do you have a supplementary? No. Okay. So we now move on to.
So, Mr. Mayor, standing order 4112M. Can I propose that we extend the meeting beyond 10:30, please?
Yes. Do you have a seconder?
Yeah.
Councillor Kerr.
So we'll put that to the vote. I'm just going to ask Anne. Can we do it in the chamber or do we have to? Okay. Right. So there is a proposal to take this motion here in the chamber. I'm going to ask if anybody in David Hicks are against that process, that we do the chamber to vote on the extension to 11 o'clock.
All in favour?
Okay, so it's not a recorded vote. So all those in favour of extension to 11 o'clock, please show. Can we stop having the comments, please? Okay, all those against? All those abstaining? I think the motion has fallen. Sorry, so 10:30 will be ending. So the next is Councillor Eunice. Your question, please.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is to Executive Member of Children's Services. Now, most of our schools in WBC are academies, and as such, beyond WBC control, what are you doing in Children's Services to ensure our children are properly educated?
Thank you for bringing up this question, which I think is important to get an understanding across everybody, the public included. Academies fall under the remit of the Regional Schools Commissioners and the Department of Education, not local authorities, most of them. In order to operate this complex landscape effectively, investment in partnership working is important. At the local level for WBC, this means that we have regular discussions with national partners such as the Regional Schools Commissioners, Ofsted and the DFE. These discussions are to review outcomes, manage any concerns regarding provision, which could then be taken forward by the appropriate agency. These meetings usually involve officers, of course. However, Children's Services Overview and Scrutiny has also met with representatives of the Regional Schools Commissioner's Office and the DFE to pose questions and seek assurance on performance and any related actions to be taken by those with direct responsibility for the academies inside the borough. Now, since I've taken up post as lead member in May 21, it has become clear that the strengthening of a strategic partnership working across schools with the local authority would be beneficial. Days of command and control by local authorities is long over. The responsibility for the children in the borough is joint with schools. The heads of schools know firsthand. They have an understanding of the needs of the children, of the guardians, and the communities in which they serve. We need to have a close partnership and engagement to understand the needs and form strategies to make that better. So therefore, the Wokingham Borough Educational Partnership has been formed with membership from early years, primary and secondary level heads. The first meeting will be towards the end of January, and this partnership will strengthen vision, strategy, collaborative working in all Wokingham schools. Bang on time.
Bang on time, well done. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Eunice?
No.
Okay, so that's the, oh, sorry, Councillor Kerr.
Thank you. It is now more than 6 months since Cranston were awarded the domestic abuse contract. Have Cranston finally got a refuge set up yet, please?
Thank you very much, Sarah, for your question. Well, since being awarded the contract in July 21, Cranston have been working hard to deliver all aspects of the Wokingham Domestic Abuse Commission contract. There are, however, some elements that have proved to be a challenge. The Council's commissioning team and community safety team continue to work closely with Cranston and monitor progress through frequent performance monitoring meetings to ensure that these issues are resolved and brought in line with the requirements of the Commission contract. Negotiations for local property continued to be undertaken as a priority by Cranston. This will ensure that an additional local refuge to add to the provision of the existing local provision is brought online as soon as possible. Cranston have commissioned a property sourcing expert to provide specialist advice in response to the urgency of the matter. It is important to reassure victims of domestic abuse who may need to or require emergency accommodation and may be considering approaching the Council for help that they will be continued to be assisted.
Do you have a supplementary?
I do, thank you. So I think the answer was no. I've had residents get in touch with me because they're pretty concerned about the award of this contract and the lack of refuge provision from the contract provider. I would request with the view of actually holding them to account and having visibility, could I please have a copy of the tender document that they submitted? And I appreciate there might be some sensitive information in there. If that could be removed so I could actually see that, because my residents are concerned and I would like to see what it is they promised and where they are with delivering it, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think, you've got to appreciate that when a contract is awarded and an item such as providing a refuge to be part of that contract, that's not already there. They've got to find the property. And to find a property that is absolutely suitable for the types of needs of people seeking refuge is not easy. We've not denied anybody refuge. If there's been any need for any assistance in safe accommodation, we will always be there to do that. There is availability of refuge in the borough. We're still working with Berkshire Women's Aid, who are providing that facility. So we're not denying anybody the safe solution, and we will continue to do that. I'm quite happy to request that suitable parts of that contract tendering process are made available. I will check with Democratic Services and see if that's okay to let you have a copy. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's the final question on the question agenda. So we now move on to item 78. We've got 20 minutes on this, which will take us to the end of the meeting. Can I ask all those who wish to ask a question on the minutes of committee meetings and ward matters, please put their hands up.
I've got Councillor Boyd here wanting to speak.
Okay, so we've got Councillor Boyd as well. Secondly, here it should be from Councillor Boyd. Thank you very much. So you can put your hands down now. So I'm going to call Councillor Jones first, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. My question is to the Leader of the Council. A resident of Hawkden Ward has asked me why the council has paid for a party political letter to be posted to its residents. They were, of course, referring to the letter which was sent out by you with your home address on it and your home phone number, indicating where the letter had come from, not the Borough Council. Was this letter and its design approved by Wokingham Borough Council local plan team? I assume that they were not involved in the drafting of a political letter. Were the council's comms team involved in the creation of the letter? Again, I assume not, because of the political nature of the letter, but I would like confirmation of this. The letter also refers to the Liberal Democrats supporting a target of 800 new homes in the borough each year locally. You know, this is untrue. Liberal Democrats have consistently for 5 years talked about an absolute maximum of 600 new homes a year in the borough. Will you apologise for these errors, and will you confirm that the costs of this party political letter are being borne by the Conservative Party and not by the council taxpayers of Wokingham? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Clive. No, the letter was drafted by the LPU team in conjunction with the comms team, and it is and was in order to ensure that we got a good response to the LPU consultation. At the time that we wrote it, the consultation was quite thin, and now I'm pleased to say that the consultation is quite adequate, so it will pass muster in the inspection public. It's quite interesting how you're able to extract stuff which is not there. The Liberal Democrat manifesto
Mr. Mayor.
for the...
Hang on. It's not me who have done that, it is a resident.
So,
And
sorry,
I'm also aware of other
sorry, what point of order are you trying to, under what point of order are you trying to make a comment?
Personal explanation 4.2.13.14.
And the point you're raising is that your name has been mentioned on something that is incorrect.
Councillor Horsell has said that I have
that he has completely misunderstood what I was saying, because it is a resident who has asked me to ask this question, and it is other residents in the borough who are also asking the same question.
Okay, I think you've had your 5 minutes of fame. The fact that it's difficult for you to explain it means it's not as obvious as possibly we would see. I can't see it. Councillor Holsall, continue, please.
As I said, the manifesto, the Lib Dem manifesto, and I believe your Lib Dems are part of the National Party, or have you dissociated yourselves from that as well, said 300,000 houses a year. So the statement, which is that the government has set a national target of 300,000 homes within its manifesto, and the Liberal Democrat manifesto per year, is absolutely correct. So I'm absolutely baffled by the question. As leader of the council, I do represent the council, and it is all the council, and I'm perfectly entitled to put my name to documents which come from the council, and I should put my name to documents which come from the council, because I take responsibility. Interestingly enough, the Lib Dems don't, because they keep on abstaining from everything which requires responsibility. If you're in this seat, Clive, you have to take responsibility, and you cannot duck that. And I don't. And yes, I'm responsible for the LPU consultation. And yes, I have done everything that I can to ensure that the response to the consultation is sound and will pass muster. And I think you should do me the courtesy of listening to me rather than talking to somebody else, Clive. So I think that I've replied to that question. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
So we're going to move on to
Point of explanation. Sorry, the leader of the council is not.
I'm sorry, Councillor Ferris. Councillor Ferris, I'm not sure whether you can make this. I'm going to consult with Democratic Services to say whether you can.
The leader of council has
Excuse me.
misled the chamber.
Excuse me. I know, that's right. So you please do the courtesy of letting us find out. The rule is it was not your speech, and so therefore there isn't a point of order on explanation. That is the ruling of the Democratic Services here. Thank you very much. So can we now move on to the next question, Councillor Boyd in David Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Community bus services such as Keep Mobile and Redibus provide a lifeline for many residents. They enable the elderly and those with disabilities to retain their independence and also present social isolation. Occasionally, the drivers of these minibuses have to park the vehicle up in order to pick up a resident who needs assistance or who has lost track of time. When this happens, they have to park wherever they can. And recently, a Keep Mobile bus was given a parking ticket in Crockenwell Road car park. I believe there needs to be a designated parking bay in at least one of the 4 Woodley car parks. And I think the cost benefits of maintaining the independence of these residents will surely outweigh the costs of losing a couple of parking bays. Would the Executive Member for Highways please give serious consideration to this request? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. Yeah, of course, we'll give consideration to it. I think the thing you have to think about with restricting spaces and only allowing them to be used by disabled buses is that when a disabled bus isn't there, nobody can use it, including other disabled drivers. So in reality, I think I would prefer to look at having a disabled space that the bus can use rather than a bus designated space, but I'll certainly look into it for you.
Thank you.
So now on Teams, Councillor Bishop first, please. Can you ask your question?
Good evening. My question's for the Executive Member for Finance. We know that there were a number of issues with the 2021 Woking Christmas market held at Cantley. Visitors reported disappointment that the advertised ice rink was in fact plastic and only really suitable for small children, and the council had to offer refunds and amend advertising. There were also vacancies at the stalls, which we understand the council was renting out at the rate of £200 a day. The Lib Dems have been asking about the financial results since before Christmas. Could the council confirm, please, what the profit or loss was from this event?
No, I can't at the moment, but I'll get the numbers for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now,
Mr. Mayor, I may be able to help here if that's okay. Thank you for your question. The Christmas market was a small scale, well-intentioned venture, and that was to help the local businesses as well. We offered the reduced rate of zero cost for the huts for these businesses. COVID didn't help, and the weather didn't help either. I am due to meet the officers next week, and the officers who actually organized it are on holiday at the moment. And I do intend to sit down and review the whole event with the officers and get some learning points, and I will feed them back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We look forward to hearing them.
thank you for your intervention, Councillor Barr. Councillor Mickleby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure which executive member I should direct this question to, but could I please ask, on behalf of a resident of Hawkton Ward, for an update on the status of the BME forum?
It's a very good question. We have run the BME forum for many years as a council. And we are determined that we shouldn't be running the BME forum, that it's actually should be run by the members of the forum. Since we've gone to the forum and said, yes, please tell us what you want and how to organize yourselves, then we have really not had a tangible result. But we're still pressing for it, and we're still pressing to resuscitate it with what is probably a very different demographic mix than when it was originally set up 20, 30 years ago, or whatever it was. So yes, the BME forum is still in existence. It's dormant for the moment. We're trying to resuscitate it, and hopefully we will. That helpful?
Thank you for that. Councillor Paul Fishwick, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a Willis Ward question to the executive member for Highways and Transport. I'm sure that we all want to see school students walking and cycling safely to school. However, this council's policy on not salting signed cycle routes resulted in many students coming off their bikes and injuring themselves on their way to Wheatfield and Forest schools in Winnersh on Tuesday morning, when air temperatures fell to -3 with widespread ice. These incidents have dented the confidence of many students who now are asking parents to drive them to school. What actions will the executive member take to make cycling safer on these designated cycling routes? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Paul. I believe we discussed gritting of cycling routes recently, maybe a couple of meetings ago. And at the time I was told that there wasn't sufficient cycle usage to be able to grit them and for them to remain safe. Because what happens is if you grit something and then nobody uses it for a while, it actually freezes over again. So if you could give me this precise route, and I can get somebody to assess whether there's actually enough cycle traffic on it to make gritting work. Just send me an email.
Thank you. Councillor Caroline Smith.
Thank you. This is for the lead member on neighbourhoods and communities. The proposed 3G pitch in early, a consultation with residents is needed before the planning application. Please could you assure me that a consultation is going to be carried out before any planning application is submitted and that all potential sites as well as Laurel Park has been assessed as to their suitability and a written scoring system recorded? Thank you.
I think I've got to refer
I
this
didn't
to
understand
planning.
that.
Yeah, to Parry.
Well, I think so. Yes, the answer to your question is yes, there will be consultation. Laurel Park and the 3G pitch there. I've had sort of discussions with David, Councillor Hare on this matter as well, and we will listen to all the consultation feedback, and we will act on it. And yes, absolutely, the consultation will take place.
Thank you. Can I just remind you to speak into the microphone? Because the people in David Hare didn't hear your question at all, unfortunately. So, Councillor Rochelle Shepherd-Dovey, please.
I think it's probably Parry again. Will you please tell me when you can improve the paths in Winnish Meadows Country Park so that differently abled people and people with prams can actually use them? They're too muddy to actually be used during the winter. It needs some kind of hard tack on there or something to improve it so they can actually move through it.
I'll definitely look into that. Thank you.
Councillor Imogen Shepherd-Dovey.
Hi there. I'm going to stand up. I'm asking again about the Christmas market. Another question. During December, the Christmas market was held at Cantley Park with the skating rink. It would also be paid for with public money, as Councillor Bishop Firth was talking about. My residents are concerned about why this location was chosen and the viability of such a project, as it was over a mile out of town, and it seems that public money was used for such an event. It should be used to a maximum effect. Most people are wondering why this was not in Wokingham Town Centre, where it symbiotically existed with the current town centre businesses and increased footfall into the town. Other concerns about the rental charges of the huts, which are impossibly high for many local businesses to use. I have asked several times for a copy of the business plan and the decision making around the Christmas market, but I have yet to see one. Can you please advise on the decision process to hold the Christmas market in this location and why this information is not openly available to councillors or the public? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may again, I've already explained that. I answered the question to Rachel already. It was a small scale, well-intentioned venture. Yes, we tried this location. It was a trial. We've held events like that in the town centre before. We thought Cantley Park would be a better place. There's a cafe nearby there, which we want to promote as well. So, and I'm meeting with the officers next week. We will review everything and learning points. We will act on it. Thank you.
And we just get the last one in, Councillor Ferris.
Thank you, Mayor. 23rd question to Graham. Last year, there was a significant problem in children getting into Piggott School, and at one point there were 58 children in the catchment area who were not able to be accommodated. Fortunately, due to a lot of work and an agreement with Piggott School, these children will be able to be accommodated. What are the plans to make sure that this does not happen again?
Thank you, Councillor Ferris. Yes, there was a problem last year, and it's really to do with planning. So this coming year, there are less places than available until we have put into place extra provision for year 7. Part of the problem with the Pigott School relating to Twyford and Wargrave and surrounding area is it's not just a question of entry into year 7, but it's through their career in the school. And you will see in the medium-term financial plan to be presented at executive next month that we are making provision for that.
Thank you. And we're at 10:30 now, so the meeting is over. I would just like to thank you all. I think we've had a very good, disciplined meeting. Got a bit rough edges around towards the end. I think that's because we're getting a little bit tired. Can I also advise and recommend, if you are going to use a point of order, either of personal explanation or whatever, please look up what that actually means so that you're on good ground when you do it, please. So on that, thank you very much.